Hello, hello. Guys, let me know if I turn this
No,
volume
I'll tell you
on that
this.
you
I
can
agree with
hear it.
CJ. We're looking for change. My generation wants change in America. I mean, he's exactly right when he quotes the time for choosing speech, but I think I go even further that. We're looking for a path forward. I'm listening to the candidate that presents the best path forward for America. Because
Can you hear that?
right now, the train's going off the rails, Tommy. So we're trying to get this train back on track, going full speed ahead. And look, let me tell you this. Every election, Republicans are going to get on TV and tell you that this is the most important election in American history, that you have to get out and vote. Well, they're right, but this one's even more important. This election will decide the future that I grow up in, that you all will grow up in. It will decide the future that we raise our families in, that our families raise their children in. This election is so pivotal for the future of America. You know, the famous Ronald Reagan quote that freedom is just one generation away from total extinction. Tommy, we are that generation. We are at that point in American history right now, and it's the time for choosing in America.
Well, so excited to hear about all that momentum. Excited to hear about all of the excitement on campus about this debate.
Yeah.
Thank you both for coming on and describing the Youth Advisory Council. Can't wait to hear more from you both, and can't wait for this debate.
Thank you for having us,
Tommy. Thanks for having us.
So in just a few minutes, that debate starts live from the University of Alabama. If you're watching that debate and you're extra motivated to vote out Joe Biden in November, go to bankyourvote.com. Take the pledge to vote early. It's the best way, the best thing, or one of them that you can do today to make sure that we beat Joe Biden in 2024 and get this country back on track. Stay tuned. That debate starts in just a few minutes.
So yeah, I tried to get a different way to stream this, and unfortunately, it didn't work out. So I had to go to the GOP's account here on Rumble. So hopefully this works. For those of you that are watching, just if you could in the chat, just put in there that you can hear the music here on this video, just so I know I'm not talking to myself and that y'all can hear this.
In Alabama, it's about tradition, family, faith, and college football. But on this night, the final showdown of the year moves to a new stage on America's newest cable news network. 40 days before the Iowa caucuses, millions of votes are still up for grabs. And 4 candidates are fighting for every last one of them. Who could catch fire and shock the political world?
2024 is do or die for us. We're not getting a mulligan on this.
Governor Ron DeSantis.
We have to have a new generational leader.
Former Ambassador Nikki Haley.
You're either pro-American or you're anti-American. That is the choice we face.
Vivek Ramaswamy.
We deserve better character in the White House.
Former Governor Chris Christie. Live on News Nation, news for all America. The lights are on. The field is set. It's game day in Alabama. And who knows what the tide will roll in.
This is a waste of time, but it's down to 4 of these nitwits, so we'll have to see what they have to say. It'll be interesting.
Debate of the year, live from the University of Alabama. I'm Megyn Kelly, host of the Megyn Kelly Show podcast on
Still
SiriusXM.
relevant somehow.
I'm Eliana Johnson with the Washington Free Beacon.
And I'm Elizabeth Vargas with News Nation, and we are live on News Nation and the CW. It is make or break time for the candidates on this stage right now, with the primary starting just weeks away. And we have a lot to cover over the next 2 hours. So let's begin with tonight's rules. Candidates will have 90 seconds to answer questions, 60 seconds to give a rebuttal at the moderator's discretion. You will all see the timing lights that will indicate when time is up and it's time to stop talking.
And the time we have is critical over the next 2 hours, so we ask the audience to please keep your applause to a minimum.
All right, with that, let's get started. On stage tonight, 4 candidates, all vying to become their party's nominee. And given the state of affairs in our political system right now, one of you might very well do it. Even many Democrats now admit that President Biden is a weak candidate, just as many Republicans acknowledge that former President Donald Trump's multiple legal troubles could imperil his quest for a second term, all of which means one of you could wind up the leader of the free world.
Come on, give me a break.
Having said that, Mr. Trump is nearly 50 points ahead of all of you in the national polls. 29 points ahead in Iowa, where the GOP caucuses are less than 6 weeks away.
Why they're trying to put him in jail.
And so, as Republicans get ready to vote on whether any of you might be preferable to Mr. Trump, we begin with the question of electability. Governor DeSantis, your campaign and its super PAC have spent the most money, had the most high net worth donors, and had a wave of momentum coming into this race after your big re-election win in Florida. You were seen by many as the candidate most likely to consolidate the non-Trump field. But here we are, a month out from the first real votes, and you haven't managed to do it. In fact, Nikki Haley is beating you in New Hampshire and South Carolina now, and closing in on you in Iowa, not to mention Trump, who is not only dominating in the early states, but is beating you in Florida by over 30 points. Is it fair to say, as Senator Tim Scott did when he dropped out, that voters are telling you, not no, but not now?
So we have a great idea in America that the voters actually make these decisions, not pundits or pollsters. I'm sick of hearing about these polls, because I remember those polls in November of 2022. They said there was going to be a big red wave. It was going to be monumental, and that crashed and burned. The one place it didn't crash and burn was in the state of Florida. They weren't predicting that I would win the way I did, and I won the greatest Republican victory in the history of the state of Florida. I'm looking forward to Iowa and New Hampshire. The voters are going to be able to speak, and we're going to earn this nomination. And here's what we need. I am sick of Republicans who are not willing to stand up and fight back against what the left is doing to this country. You've got to be willing to stand strong, and you've got to be willing to beat these people. I'm the only one running for president that has beaten these people on issue after issue. We beat the teachers' unions when we did school choice. We beat Fauci on COVID. We beat George Soros when we removed 2 of his radical district attorneys. We beat the Democrats on election integrity. I have delivered results. That's what we need for this country. And you have other candidates up here like Nikki Haley. She caves anytime the left comes after her, anytime the media comes after her. I did a bill in Florida to stop the gender mutilation of minors. It's child abuse, and it's wrong. She opposes that bill. She thinks it's fine, and the law shouldn't get involved with it. If you're not willing to stand up for the kids, if you're not willing to stand up and say that it is wrong to mutilate these kids, then you're not going to fight for the people back home. I will fight for you, and I will win for you.
DeSantis is throwing hands already.
Ambassador Haley, you left government service in 2018 with just $100,000 in the bank. 5 years later, you're reportedly worth $8 million, thanks to lucrative corporate speeches and board memberships like you had with Boeing. Weeks ago, you met with Wall Street heavyweights, including leaders from J.P. Morgan, Goldman Sachs, and BlackRock. Several other billionaire investors are reportedly ready to endorse you, or recently have, all of which comes with expectations. Aren't you too tight with the banks and the billionaires to win over the GOP's working class base, which mostly wants to break the system, not elect someone beholden to it?
Well, thank you. It's great to be here. You know, first I'll tell you, just to respond to Ron, he continues to lie about my record. I actually said his Don't Say Gay bill didn't go far enough because it only talked about gender until the 3rd grade. And I said it shouldn't be done at all, that's for parents to talk about, it shouldn't be talked about with schools. In reference to donors coming on board, look, we will take support from anybody we can take support from, but I have been a conservative fighter all my life. I was a Tea Party candidate when I became governor. We opposed every single corporate bailout we possibly could. We passed tort reform. We passed one of the toughest illegal immigration laws in the country. We passed pro-life bills. We moved in unemployment from 11% to 3%. We took on the unions, and we took on Obama when it came to the unions, the Syrian refugees, and everything in between. And so I've had a fight. And so as much as Ron says that, that's not true. But when it comes to these corporate people that want to suddenly support us, we'll take it. But I don't ask them what their policies are.
I wouldn't
they ask
say it
me
that
what
way,
my
by the way.
policies are. And I tell them what it is. Sometimes they agree with me, sometimes they don't. Some don't like how tough I am on China. Some don't like the fact that I've signed pro-life bills. Some don't like the fact that I may oppose corporate bailouts. That doesn't matter. That's who I am. And that's why the most conservative grassroots group in the country, Americans for Prosperity, endorsed me last week.
Well, because she didn't respond to the criticism. It wasn't about the Parents' Rights and Education bill. It was about prohibiting sex change operations on minors. They do puberty blockers. These are irreversible. Talk to Chloe Cole. She went through this. Now she's an adult. She's warning against it. She may never be able to have kids again. That is what Nikki Haley opposed. She said the law shouldn't get involved in that. And I just ask you, if you're somebody that's going to be the president of the United States and you can't stand up against child abuse, how are you going to be able to stand up for anything? That is the truth. We have it on video.
I said that if you have to be 18 to get a tattoo, you should have to be 18 to have anything done to change your gender.
You said the law should stay out of it.
We're going to get to this in more detail later. Let's
that I
finish
read.
with electability, but trust me, we're coming back to this issue. Mr. Ramaswamy, for months you campaigned as a unifier. Then you stood up at the first debate and attacked all of your competitors as bought and paid for. The second debate, you changed your tune, saying, these are good people on this stage, admitting you can come across as a bit of a know-it-all and rejecting the practice of personal insults. By debate number 3, you called Nikki Haley corrupt, accused Ron DeSantis of wearing high heels, and told Ambassador Haley she should keep a closer eye on her daughter. Can you see how this has led some to conclude you are not, in fact, a unifier, and to question your authenticity?
Megyn, I think there's a time and place for everything. We need somebody in the White House who absolutely is going to be a fighter when it counts. And I did say that there were some good people on that stage in that third debate. Doug Burgum was on that stage at that time, and I'll say that jokingly. Ron DeSantis is a good person, too. I want to go back, though, to Nikki Haley's comment from earlier that she is somehow not responding to the will of these donors. Nikki, you were bankrupt when you left the UN. After you left the UN, you became a military contractor. You actually started joining service on the board of Boeing, whose back you scratched for a very long time, and then gave foreign multinational speeches like Hillary Clinton is, and now you're a multimillionaire.
There you go.
That math does not add up. It adds up to the fact that you are corrupt. And when I said they were bought and paid for, I meant the Republican establishment, not the Democratic establishment. Now you have Reid Hoffman, the person who's effectively George Soros Jr., funding lawsuits across this country against Donald Trump to keep him off the ballot, funding left-wing causes. We discovered this week that he is one of Nikki Haley's largest supporters. Larry Fink, the king of the woke industrial complex, the ESG movement, the CEO of BlackRock, the most powerful company in the world, now supporting Nikki Haley. And to say that doesn't affect her is false, because it's after that meeting later that day that she says that every American needs to be doxxed by having their ID, their government-issued ID, tied to what they say on the internet. So I think that this is far more corrupt than I even imagined when I entered politics.
I'm going to talk about that in a second. I think he's wrong about that.
It is going to take a leader from the outside with fresh legs from the next generation to unite this country. Not the broken politicians who are puppets of the puppet masters, but the actual people in this country. Thomas Jefferson was 33 when he wrote the Declaration of Independence. I think it's going to take somebody whose best days in life are still ahead to see a country whose best days are ahead of itself. And I think I can reach that next generation better than anybody else in this race.
Thank you.
Ramaswamy has his own problems, which I'm going to discuss later when I have the opportunity to. I'd rather let everybody talk. But Ramaswamy says all the right things, but he's got issues that I definitely want to go over.
And governor. It may be bankrupt to him, but it certainly wasn't bankrupt to us. Secondly, I did serve on the board of Boeing. I did a lot of work with Boeing when I was governor. They were a great partner to me. I served for 10 months. And then when they decided after COVID that they wanted to go for a corporate bailout, I've never supported corporate bailout, so I respectfully stepped back and got off the board. I love Boeing. They build good commercial airplanes. They build airplanes for our Air Force. I am proud of them. They employ a lot of people in South Carolina. But that's why I left the Boeing board. There's nothing to what he's saying. And in terms of these donors that are supporting me, they're just jealous. They wish that they were supporting them, but I'm not going to sit there and deny.
Those are all the donors in the audience, by the way, that are yelling and screaming.
So,
all the money
wrote
that's
a book
involved is
talking
screaming
about
in the audience.
ESG and these woke corporations in BlackRock. The idea that I want to do that in Florida, they were managing our part of our pension, and then when they did the ESG, I took $2 billion away from BlackRock. We took action. This ESG, they call it environment, social governance, and again, Nikki is meeting with all these people. They want to use economic power to impose a left-wing agenda on this country. They want basically to change society without having to go through the constitutional process. We've kneecapped it in the state of Florida. The next president of the United States needs to be able to go to that office on day one and end ESG. And the fact of the matter is, we know from her history, Nikki will cave to those big donors when it counts. And that is not acceptable.
I did write that book, Ron, and the irony is Nikki Haley was heaping praise on me when I wrote that book, but now I worry. I was warning about the woke industrial complex in this country as a warning. Apparently, she read it as a how-to manual, just like she reads George Orwell's books as well. And so I think that that's actually far more dangerous than, this is really important for people to understand. We're marching towards fascism under Biden. Jack Smith has subpoenaed every last retweet that someone has issued from Donald Trump in the year 2020. The only person more fascist than the Biden regime now is Nikki Haley, who thinks the government should identify every one of those individuals with an ID. That is not freedom, that is fascism, and she should come nowhere near the levers of power.
This is just like 2016, 2015, the debates where all the donors were sitting in the crowd.
I really appreciate that.
How you doing, sir?
Good to see you.
Can you please speak to the requirement that you said that every anonymous internet user needs to out themselves? They're both hitting you on it.
I would be happy to, and I love all the attention, fellas. Thank you for that. I'll
is the
say
new
this.
darling
What I said was that social
oligarchs.
media companies need to show us their algorithms. I also said there are millions of bots on social media right now. They're foreign, they're Chinese, they're Iranian. I will always fight for freedom of speech for Americans. We do not need freedom of speech for Russians and Iranians and Hamas. We need social media companies to go and fight back on all of these bots that are happening. That's what I said. As a mom, do I think that social media would be more civil if we went and had people's names next to that? Yes, I do think that, because I think we've got too much cyberbullying. I think we've got child pornography and all of those things. But having said that, I never said government should go and require anyone's name.
That's false. She said, I want your name. She as President of the United States, her first day in office, she said, one of the first things I'm going to do,
I said we were going to get the millions of bots.
She wants government ID to dox every American.
That's what she said. You can roll the tape. She said, I want your name. And that was going to be one of the first things she did in office. And then she got real serious blowback, and understandably so, because it'd be a massive expansion of government. We have anonymous speech. The Federalist Papers were written with anonymous writers. Jay, Madison, and Hamilton, they went under Publius. It's something that's important, and especially given how conservatives have been attacked and they've lost jobs and they've been canceled. You know the regime would use that to weaponize that against our own people. It was a bad idea, and she should own up to it. Come on, now, what are we doing here?
15 seconds, and then there is the governor, former governor of New Jersey,
This cracks me up because Ron is so hypocritical, because he actually went and tried to push a law that would stop anonymous people from talking to the press, and went so far to say bloggers should have to register with the state if they're going to write about elected officials.
That's true.
Check your newspaper. It was absolutely there. I have never said
government on your constitutional
You can come back to it later.
This is more dangerous than the Democrats.
You're lying. This section's over. Okay. Governor Christie.
Really?
Just that
I'm usually not somebody who gets missed, but okay, let's go.
What's happening? Okay, I got you. Listen, you endorsed Donald Trump in 2016 and 2020. You gave him an A for his first term. Since then, however, you've turned on him, calling him a liar, a loser, a con man, and someone who cannot win. You've even said that you got into this race just to stop President Trump. His approval rating with Republicans is currently at 81%. Yours is at 25%. Your best state is New Hampshire, and even there, 2/3 of GOP voters say they would be angry and disappointed if you won. Respectfully, Governor, you have not stopped Mr. Trump, and voters may wonder how you could possibly become the nominee of a party that does not appear to like you very much.
Yeah, well, look, Megyn, it's often very difficult to be the only person on the stage who's telling the truth, and the only person who is taking on what needs to be taken on. I look at my watch now. We're 17 minutes into this debate, and except for your little speech in the beginning, we've had these three acting as if the race is between the four of us. The fifth guy, who doesn't have the guts to show up and stand
here we go again.
He's the one who, as you just put it, is way ahead in the polls. And yet, I've got these three guys who are all seemingly to compete with, Voldemort. He who shall not be named.
Duck.
They don't want to talk about it. The fact is that when you go and you say the truth about somebody who is a dictator, a bully, who has taken shots at everybody, whether they've given him great service or not over time, who dares to disagree with him, then I understand why these three are timid to say anything about it. Maybe it's because they have future aspirations. Maybe those future aspirations are now, or maybe they're 4 years from now. But the fact of the matter is the truth needs to be told. And for us to go 17 minutes without discussing the guy who has all those gaudy numbers you talked about is ridiculous. I'm in this race because the truth needs to be spoken. He is unfit. This is a guy who just said this past week that he wants to use the Department of Justice to go after his enemies when he gets in there. I mean, the fact of the matter is he is unfit to be president, and there is no bigger issue in this race, Megyn, than Donald Trump, and those numbers prove it.
Governor Christie, we will be addressing that issue of Donald Trump in just a moment, but I'd like to first get to some questions on Israel. Governor DeSantis, tonight as we speak, the war is back on in Gaza. Israeli tanks are on the move and have surrounded the home of the leader of Hamas. 8 Americans have been held hostage in the tunnels beneath Gaza for 60 days now. American troops and warships in the Middle East are under attack. How far would you go as president to secure the release of those 8 American hostages? And would it include sending American forces into combat?
We have to look out for our people. When there are hostages, Commander-in-Chief, you have to do whatever you can to get them done. But the overall issue with this is this administration is trying to hobble Israel from being able to defend itself. They have a right to eliminate Hamas and win a total and complete victory so that they never have to deal with this again. Hamas wants nothing less than a second Holocaust. They would wipe off every single Jew off the map. They would destroy the state of Israel if we could. Joe Biden will say they support Israel, and then they do nothing but try to kneecap them every step of the way. You should not try to direct their war effort. We should work together with them so that they can bring Hamas to heel. Look, I served in Iraq back in the day. I'm the only one running for president that served in the military. I understand that part of the world. It's not the best part of the world. We do have troops there that Biden is leaving basically as sitting ducks. And you have the Iranians that are attacking these troops, and he's responding with basically pinpricks. If you harm an American service member, you're going to have hell to pay when I'm president. We are not going to let our troops be sitting ducks. We also need to look at what's the underlying problem here. Iran. Biden is doing nothing to bring Iran to account. You got to turn the screws on them. Don't let them have any oil revenue. The money they get, they send to Hamas, they send to Hezbollah, and they foment jihad throughout the Middle East. So Biden has empowered Iran just like he's empowered other adversaries. We stand with Israel. They're our best ally in the Middle East. We have a unique relationship with them, and you will see a strong relationship when I'm the president of the United States.
But would you send American troops?
Elizabeth, look, this is the problem with the first 3 debates. Ron gets asked a question, and he doesn't answer it. Your question was very specific. You said, would you send American troops as commander-in-chief? And he went on to this minute and 30-second hosanna about his knowledge of the military and what we need to do, and didn't answer your question. Look, when you're president of the United States, you're not going to have a choice whether to answer that question or not. Your generals, your Secretary of Defense, your Secretary of State, your National Security Advisor are going to present plans to you. They're going to look at you and say, do we go or don't we, Mr. President? And you can't give a 90-second speech about your military service, as laudable as it is.
Would you send American troops into
He's not answering it either, is he?
Absolutely. Absolutely. If they had a plan which showed me that we could get them out safely, you're damn right I'd send the American Army in there to get our people home and get them home now. And I'll answer that question directly.
Thank you, Governor Christie. Mr. Ramaswamy, You have said it was irresponsible for Ambassador Haley to call Hamas's terrorist rampage an attack on America and for her to, quote, rabidly shout, "Finish them," end quote. The Hamas terror attack left dozens of Americans dead and was the deadliest attack on Jews since the Holocaust. Why wouldn't it be a good thing to finish Hamas?
Finish them was purposefully vague in a discussion that included Iran, which is what I objected to. And I think it's, as U.S. president, you have to be responsible. What happened to Israel was dead wrong. What Hamas did was medieval. It was subhuman. It was immoral. And we have to call that out for what it is on October 7th. But to say that that was an attack on America fails a basic test. I mean, Nick, if you can't tell the difference between where Israel is and the U.S. is on a map, I can have my 3-year-old son show you the difference. That is irresponsible because it has major consequences, because that doesn't leave room for what actually is an attack on America. So I believe I have the strongest pro-Israel position actually on the stage, even though it's a little bit different than the standard GOP talking points. And it is this. The founding vision of Israel, David Ben-Gurion, the George Washington figure of Israel, what did he believe? He believed that we don't want, as Israel, to depend on the fleeting sympathies of the West and have our hands tied. I think Israel has an absolute right to defend itself to the fullest, without the U.S., the UN, or the EU, or anybody else second-guessing their decisions, as the Biden administration, guess what, is now starting to do. I think that's a more deeply pro-Israel position than anybody else, and it keeps the actual lines of accountability clear because it is a pro-American position. And as leader of the United States of America, just as a father of 2 sons, my sole moral duty is to my family. As your next
president, words, don't get involved.
My sole moral duty is to you, the people of this country. That's how I'm going to lead. So I'll tell Bibi, you smoke the terrorists on your southern border, you go ahead and we're rooting for you. We're going to smoke the terrorists on our own southern border, and that's how I'm going to lead this country.
But Americans were killed in that attack. Americans were killed in that attack. And so if you looked at this terrorist attack and the number of Americans, this would be one of the top 10 terrorist attacks in American history. So our own people were killed in that attack. And I think it's absolutely appropriate to point that out and to say that we're in this together and we are going to work with Israel so that these people are brought to justice.
I agree with that.
Ambassador Haley, I'm coming to you. Iran is on the threshold of becoming a nuclear state. The Wall Street Journal reported that Iranian military leaders gave the green light for Hamas's attack on Israel. You said in last month's debate that, by contrast to the Biden administration's approach to Iran, you would, quote, punch them once and punch them hard. Were you saying that it's time to bomb Iran?
No, I was not saying it's time to bomb Iran, but I will tell you, I dealt with Iran every day when I was at the United Nations, and they only respond to strength. What they don't respond to is when you weaken the sanctions like they did on Iran that allowed China to send them billions to fill their proxies. What they don't respond to is when you give $6 billion for 5 hostages. That only makes them want more hostages. What they don't respond to is when they do 140 strikes on our men and women in Syria and Iraq, and we do nothing but just some small shots back. You've got to punch them, you've got to punch them hard, and let them know that. That's the only way they're going to respond. So the way you do that is you go after their infrastructure in Syria and Iraq where they're hitting our soldiers. That's what you do, and then that's when they'll back off. The problem is you have to see that all of these are related. If you look at the fact Russia was losing that war with Ukraine. Putin had hit rock bottom. They had raised the draft age to 65. He was getting drones and missiles, drones from Iran, missiles from North Korea. And so what happened? When he hit rock bottom, all of a sudden, his other friend, Iran, Hamas goes and invades Israel and butchers those people on Putin's birthday. There is no one happier right now than Putin because all of the attention America had on Ukraine suddenly went to Israel. And that's what they were hoping is going to happen. We need to make sure that we have full clarity that there is a reason, again, that Taiwanese want to help Ukrainians because they know if Ukraine wins, China won't invade Taiwan. There's a reason the Ukrainians want to help Israelis because they know that if Iran wins, Russia wins. These are all connected. But what wins all of that is a strong America, not a weak America. And that's what Joe Biden's given us.
I want to say one thing about the tie to Ukraine.
We're at the point now, I think we all know that Russia won.
Foreign policy experience is not the same as foreign policy wisdom. I want everybody at home to note that I was the first person to say we need a reasonable peace deal in Ukraine. Now a lot of the neocons are quietly coming along to that position.
'Cause they have
with
no
the
choice 'cause they know that
exceptions
Russia
of Nikki
won.
Haley and Joe Biden, who still support this, what I believe is pointless war in Ukraine. And I think those with foreign policy experience, one thing that Joe Biden and Nikki Haley have in common is that neither of them could even state for you 3 provinces in eastern Ukraine that they want to send our troops to actually fight for. Look at that. This is what I want people to understand. These people have, I mean, she has no idea what the hell the names of those provinces are, but she wants to send our sons and daughters and our troops and our military equipment to go fight it. So reject this myth that they've been selling you, that somebody had a cup of coffee stint at the UN and then makes $8 million after, has real foreign policy experience. It takes an outsider to see this through. Look at the blank expression. She doesn't know the names of the provinces
you're pissing off the
that she
donors
wants to
now.
actually fight for. And there's her puppet masters right there, the donors right there that are playing around the
That's
puppet.
the donors, man.
Let me just say something here. You know, his reasonable peace deal in Ukraine, he made it clear. Give them all the land they've already stolen, promise Putin you'll never put Ukraine in Russia, and then trust Putin not to have a relationship with China. Let me tell you something. That's no
That's
reasonable.
not my deal. That's not my deal,
yes,
Chris.
it's exactly what you
I'll
said.
describe
You
my
do
deal
this
to
at
you.
every debate.
I'll tell you
you
exactly
say
what it
no,
is.
don't
I'll
interrupt
tell
me.
you
I
what to
didn't
do.
interrupt
I hope
you.
they fight.
Okay? You
Tell
say
them
this.
about how you
You
wanna
do
send our
this.
kids to die.
You
Go
do
for it.
this at
Ramaswamy.
every debate. You go out on the stump and you say something. All of us see it on video. We confront you on the debate stage. You say you didn't say it, and then you back away. And I want to
I'll
say
tell you
what.
exactly
no,
what I said, Chris.
I'm not done yet.
Well, this
Now,
is
look.
this is
Uh-oh.
nonsense. This man is spewing.
Here we go.
This man is spewing nonsense.
Let me tell you something. This is the fourth debate that you would be voted in the first 20 minutes as the most obnoxious blowhard in America. So shut up for a little while.
I'm gonna respond to that.
I want to
Chris,
say
your
something.
version of
We're going to let you
wanna say-
respond to that. We're going to let you respond to
I'll
that.
take
Let him
that.
finish.
I want to say
Chris
something
Christie
else.
is a psychopath.
We're now 25 minutes into this debate, and he has insulted Nikki Haley's basic intelligence, not her positions, her basic intelligence. She doesn't know regions. She wouldn't be able to find something on a map that his 3-year-old could find.
Might be
If
true.
you want to disagree on issues, that's fine. And Nikki and I disagree on some issues. But I'll tell you this, I've known her for 12 years, which is longer than he's even started to vote in a Republican primary.
Like a Jerry Springer show.
And while we disagree about some issues and we disagree about who should be president of the United States, what we don't disagree on is this is a smart, accomplished woman, and you should stop insulting
So
her.
I'm going to take this. I'm going to take several times over.
Give me a break.
So first of all, I think we just learned
If she can't handle it, she
something
can't be
from Chris
president.
Christie. We learned three things.
Go
We
ahead.
learned 3 things right there. First of all, Chris Christie also doesn't know what provinces in eastern Ukraine he actually wants us to fight for. Chris, your version of foreign policy experience was closing a bridge from New Jersey to New York.
Yeah.
So do everybody a favor. Just walk yourself off that stage, enjoy a nice meal,
Yeah.
and get the hell out of this race. When it comes to Nikki, I think if you're going to actually
This is
send your
deteriorating.
sons and daughters to go
While
die
you
in somebody
weren't
else's
voting-
war,
Hold on.
while you
better,
weren't
excuse
voting-
me, Chris, I'm speaking, and I'm not done yet.
I haven't
you had
heard
your
a
chance,
time when you aren't
and we're going to be
speaking.
done. So listen up to this: is if these people want to send your sons and daughters to go die in Ukraine, they've been arguing for it for a year. $200 billion of our taxpayer money sent over. Neither of them could even name for you the provinces that they actually want to protect. And this is the people who have been touting their so-called foreign policy experience. It is intellectual fraud. These people are lying to you, the same people who told you about weapons and mass destruction in Iraq. To justify that invasion, didn't know the first thing about it, yet they sent thousands of our sons and daughters to go die. The same people who told you the same in Afghanistan, where the Taliban is still in charge 20 years later. $7 trillion of our national debt due to these toxic neocons. You can put lipstick on a Dick Cheney, it is still a fascist neocon.
Thank
and
you,
you gotta
Mr.
see that
Ramaswamy.
today.
Thank you,
It's
Mr.
Dick Cheney
Ramaswamy.
all over again in this party.
Thank you, Mr. Ramaswamy. 15 seconds.
Name the provinces. Neither of you could even name the first thing about Eastern
Thank you.
Ukraine.
I think we've had enough of this. And Crimea.
Think about that.
Let me just.
It's actually, Crimea is the wrong
All right,
answer.
so
All right,
the floor is Christie's.
All right, let me just say this. You know, this is the kind of thing where he talks about experience. You know, I was the U.S.
It wasn't me
attorney
that blocked
in
you.
New Jersey
It must have been
when the
YouTube.
terrorist attacks were launched against the United States in 2001. I brought the two
Follow me on
first two
Rumble
cases
because
in
I'm
this
on.
country against terrorists who tried to attack us.
I'm on
again.
Rumble as well.
And I know about the threat of terrorism and bullying in this country and around the world. And at that time, He was learning about the provinces in Ukraine, sitting with his smart-ass mouth at Harvard. That's what was going on. And so the fact of the matter is, and back then he was a Democrat. So the fact is that all he knows how to do.
Well, you were busy hugging Barack Obama getting elected.
Thank you.
All he knows how to do is insult good people who have committed their lives to public service and not say anything that moves the ball down the field for the United States.
All right, thank you, Governor Christie. We are going to take a quick break, cool things down a little bit. When we come back, we're going to tackle issues on the southern border. We'll be back in a few minutes.
Okay, so one of the things I wanted to go over is Ramaswamy. I don't know if a lot of people know this, but I'm going to read you this article. And I don't think anyone's been talking about this at all, and I think they're coming after him. I think they're coming after everybody except Nikki Haley, because she is now the darling of all the donors, and that's who they're going for. But Ramaswamy is a multimillionaire. I think he's like worth $600 million, and how he ended up getting his money is through a company called Axovant. And I happen to read his book as well, Woke Inc. And he, back in the several years ago, paid GlaxoSmithKline $5 million for a drug for Alzheimer's that was already went through multiple trials. And essentially, GlaxoSmithKline just got rid of it because they just couldn't make it work. So he ended up buying it for $5 million. His mother is a doctor, put her on the research, and then he did an IPO for, I think it's $315 million. And at that point, when the IPO launched, the valuation approached $3 billion. In 2017, Axovant released more trial results that found that the drug was ineffective. Even Jim Cramer had him on, and everybody that knows Jim Cramer, if he touts a stock or tells you something to buy something, do the opposite, because Jim Cramer's wrong about just about everything. And so this Axovant that Ramaswamy put out just fell apart. But he had pocketed tens of millions of dollars, if not more, and everybody else kind of got left holding the bag. I don't know why this isn't being talked about, because in my opinion, here's a guy who's running for president, and this is the biggest thing, in my opinion, that he could get hit on, is how he's made hundreds of millions of dollars on a failed drug. But I don't know. Yeah, Mark, I keep seeing your message retracted, so I don't know if you are retracting them or it's being done by YouTube. But those of you that are watching on YouTube, please head over to Rumble. It's rumble.com/Dennis Hendrickson, and subscribe to me there, because I don't know how much longer I'm going to end up being on YouTube. My monetization has gone down to next to nothing, and it's extremely hard. I mean, I was getting hundreds of thousands of views on videos, and you know, as it always gets closer to the to election season, the videos they just get hammered all the way down to just hundreds of views. So if you can head over to Rumble and subscribe to me there, that'd be great, because eventually I'd probably be demonetized, and then eventually the channel's going to get shut down on YouTube. But this has been interesting debate so far. And notice, and one of the things that I think is really important, and we'll see how much longer this goes, because we're only 40 minutes into it. They've talked about everything except the southern border, and they talked about Ukraine. They haven't even talked about Ukraine and the fact that essentially Ukraine has been won by Russia, the Ukraine war, and all they do is talk about Israel, and haven't talked about anything about the southern border. Haven't talked about anything about what's happening with how people are doing in the United States, interest rates, all that kind of stuff. So I wonder if they're going to end up talking about that. We'll see. They've got plenty of time. I got my cat in here making noise. All right, I think we're going back here. I'll turn the volume back up.
Nation from Tuscaloosa, Alabama. We are now going to go to the crisis on the southern border. Polls show immigration and the crisis are among the most pressing issues for Republican voters right now. Both the issue of migrants crossing illegally into our country and the separate issue of fentanyl being smuggled in mostly through legal ports of entry. All year, News Nation has been at the border documenting the crisis. In 2023 alone, Border Patrol encountered a record 2.4 million migrants. All four of you have talked tough. The question now is, how realistic is the talk? So, Governor DeSantis, I'd like to start with you. You have pledged to send the military to the southern border on day one of your administration with orders to shoot, quote, stone cold dead anyone illegally entering with a backpack that you believe contains fentanyl. Critics have called this a shoot first, ask questions later policy that would amount to extrajudicial killing. You are a former military lawyer. Why do you think this idea of yours would be legal?
The drug cartels are invading our country, and they are killing our citizens by the tens of thousands every year. We had a situation in Florida. There was an 18-month-old baby that was crawling on the floor of an Airbnb rental. There was fentanyl residue on the carpet, and the baby died. Is this acceptable in this country? I know the elites in D.C., they don't care. They don't care that fentanyl's ravaging your community. They don't care that illegal aliens are ravaging our community and overwhelming our community. The commander-in-chief not only has a right, you have a responsibility to fight back against these people.
And does that mean shooting first?
It means you're going to categorize them as foreign terrorist organizations, and we will identify, just like we would anywhere. When I was in Iraq, the Al-Qaeda wasn't wearing a uniform. You'd see anyone walking down the street, they all had man dresses on. You didn't know if someone had a bomb, an IED attached or not. And so you had to make a judgment based on intelligence, based on positive identification. But we're going to be able to get the intelligence on these cartel people. And here's the thing. If we had a wall across the southern border, which I support, this would not have happened. We need to build a wall across the southern border. I'll get it done, and Mexico is supposed to pay for it. Remember, here's how you do that. I'm going to have fees on remittances from foreign workers when they send the money back to foreign countries. We're going to tax it, and we're going to build a wall with that. So, yes, you should have had that. But we don't have it. I'm going to build it. But we have to lean in on this problem. I am not going to sit there and allow mothers to lose more kids because of fentanyl overdose. I am not going to sit there and let sex trafficking go unabated or human trafficking go unabated. There's going to be a new sheriff in town, and these drug cartels better buckle up.
Thank you. Ambassador Haley, you have pledged to catch and deport all migrants who are here in this country illegally, but then you said in Londonderry, New Hampshire last month that you will not deport those who are working and paying taxes rather than feeding off the system. Which is it?
So first of all, what I said is all of the 7 or 8 million illegals that have come under Biden's watch absolutely have to go back. We have to stop the incentive of what's bringing them over here in the first place. Biden just gave temporary protective status to 500,000 Venezuelans. That's 500,000 Social Security cards. That's 500,000 driver's licenses. And I know from my time at the United Nations, the first thing they do is pick up the phone and said, we came over, come on over. And that's what sends more. You have to go and deport these people so they know it can't happen again. For those that have been here longer than that, we've got to start seeing who is it, how long have they been here, have they been vetted, have they paid taxes, have they been working, and figure out who else is out there. But what I know is my parents came here legally. They put in the time, they put in the price. They are offended by those that are coming illegally. We can't let them skip the line. But when you talk about fentanyl like you did before, let's look at something else. Yes, I think we should send special operations over and take out the cartels. I think we should do a remain in Mexico policy so they never step foot in U.S. soil in the first place. But look at where fentanyl came from. Let's go to the heart of the matter. It came from China. That's why we need to end all normal trade relations with China until they stop murdering Americans with fentanyl. I promise you, they need our economy. They will immediately stop that. But this is where Trump went wrong. Trump was good on trade, but that's all he was with China. Because here he allowed fentanyl to continue to come over. He continued to allow them to he would give them technology that would build up their military and hurt us. He allowed the Chinese infiltration for them to buy up farmland, to put money in our universities, and to continue to do things that were harmful for America. We now have a spy base in Cuba and police stations, and Trump didn't do anything about it.
Her China, though, I mean, this is rich, because when she was governor of South Carolina, she was the #1 ranked governor of bringing the CCP into her state. She wrote a love letter to the Chinese ambassador saying how great a friend China is. You can look at it. We put it on our website, rondesantis.com. There's also a video of her as governor standing in front of a Chinese flag with a Chinese business saying that she now works for them, talking about this Chinese company. So she's been very weak on China. Now, here's the problem. The rhetoric is different, but her donors, these Wall Street liberal donors, they make money in China. They are not going to let her be tough on China, and she will cave to the donors. She will not stand up for you.
15 seconds, Ambassador.
They're importing people to backfill jobs.
First of all, he's mad because those Wall
take.
Street donors used to support him, and now they support me. The second thing is he has a company, a Chinese company, UGAS, that he just did a rally there last year. They have given you $340,000 in campaign donations between them and their employees. They are tied to the Communist Chinese Party. Jinko Solar is another one. They went and expanded. You gave $2 million in subsidies.
I banned China from buying land in the state of Florida.
The Department of Homeland.
I ejected the Confucius Institute. Nikki Haley brought Confucius Institutes to the universities in South Carolina.
That is not true.
I ejected them. So I have a record of standing up and do what's right. And here's the thing.
You have a record of lying.
She's trying to say things like that. Even the liberal media groups that usually, if I say the sky is blue, they'll fact check me and say that's wrong. They looked at her charges. They said it was totally false, that they could not find one instance of me recruiting a Chinese business coming to Florida. You know why? Because we never recruited any Chinese businesses to the state of Florida.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Ramaswamy, over the past year, fentanyl has killed more than 75,000 Americans, 1,000 of them right here in Alabama. You have vowed to use the military to, quote, annihilate drug labs inside Mexico, something the president of Mexico said would be a hostile act. But fentanyl can easily be made anywhere, and labs that are shut down can easily and quickly be replaced. Are your tough enforcement policies offering false hope to a country racked by addiction?
To the contrary, I don't think it's going to have to come to that if we deal with the actual demand side problem that we also have in this country. I mean, the easy part is talking about how we're going to use our military to secure the border. I will, and I believe that everybody else wants to do the same thing. But the harder part is dealing with the crisis of purpose and meaning, the mental health epidemic raging across this country like wildfire. And there's a reason why after the opioid crisis, you see fentanyl. And even after we get fentanyl, and we are going to be sure to make sure we do it, this one is worse for many reasons. They're illegally lacing it into pharmaceuticals, so it's more dangerous. But we're deluding ourselves. The real false promise here is thinking that we're going to have dealt with that underlying mental health epidemic in this country by just dealing with the demand side of it. But I want to get back to this issue of the root cause, because a lot of these are coming from labs in Wuhan, China, of all places. Drug materials that are going to the Mexican drug cartels that they're pumping across that southern border like a modern opium war. I think it is going to take a U.S. president that's going to have a very different conversation with Xi Jinping than what Joe Biden just had in California. I will tell Xi Jinping, you will not only not buy land in this country or donate to universities in this country, U.S. businesses won't expand into the Chinese market until they're playing by the same set of rules. And the same country that's putting fentanyl into illegal pharmaceuticals in Mexico, it's no coincidence, is the exact same country that also unleashed hell on the world with the COVID-19 pandemic. We also have to hold them accountable with every financial lever that we have available. That is what it actually means to stand with a spine. And you mark my words, if we're willing to stand with the spine, China will absolutely have to fold because they're in a tougher spot than we are. And then we're back to playing by the same set of rules.
Thank you, Mr. Ramaswamy. Thank you. Let's talk about the economy. Ambassador Haley, homeownership has always been part of the American dream, but it's increasingly out of reach for younger Americans. This year, mortgage rates reached 30-year highs. Home prices have risen $190,000 over the past decade. Is this the free market at work? Or should the federal government do something to make homes more affordable?
Well, first of all, I mean, you're exactly right. My daughter just got married, and I saw how hard it was for her and her husband to buy a home. Right now, the average homeowner in America is 49 years old. You've got young people everywhere. That used to be the American dream, and now it's out of reach. But you look at what happened. You first of all look at what the Fed did. The Fed did a terrible job when they allowed all of that money to go through. You saw the Treasury bond rates go up. That affected mortgage rates, that affected automobile rates, that affected insurance rates. And so now we have a high interest rate. You've got a supply issue. Ask any builder. The supply issues have continued to be there. That's caused the rate to go up. And then you've got insurances that have gone up. And so what you have is a lot of younger people who, one, can't afford a home, but two, the banks aren't lending them any money. They've made the regulations so hard that they don't want to give loans on mortgages anymore. So what we have to do is we have to open it up. We have to, one, grow our economy so that people have more money in their pockets. We've got to look at the supply chain and make sure that we are funneling that so that builders don't have to sit there and go overseas to find things. And then we need to make sure that we really stop paying down this debt, make sure that we stop the borrowing, stop the spending. I'll veto any spending bill that doesn't take us back to pre-COVID levels, because our kids are not going to forgive us for all the spending that happened. And as much as everybody wants to talk about how Donald Trump had a good economy, $9 trillion in debt he did just in 4 years. And we're all paying the price of that, including those mortgage prices.
We're going to come back to President Trump, I promise. Governor DeSantis, the latest News Nation Decision Desk poll found that inflation tops the worries of American voters. 61% say they're very concerned, and the working class is hardest hit. Economists say this was fueled by a glut of federal spending. The Biden administration has added $6 trillion to the national debt so far, but President Trump wasn't exactly a penny pincher. His administration added $7.8 trillion. Do Republicans, including President Trump, share the blame for inflation? And what concrete steps would a President DeSantis take to help Americans make ends meet?
The borrowing, printing, and spending of money was both parties in Washington, D.C. That's just a fact. These Republicans in Washington have spent. It's driven your prices higher, and it's driven your interest rates to the point where you can't afford. I met a young fella in Iowa. He had graduated college a couple years ago, and he's like, Governor, I don't have a chance. I'm gainfully employed. He's like, I have no chance to afford a home and start a family. That is taking the American dream away from people. So we're going to get the inflation down. We're going to get the interest rates down. We are going to reduce spending, and I will be willing to veto, and I vetoed a lot as governor of Florida, and we'll do that. We're also going to open up all of our domestic energy for production, lower your gas prices.
Somebody needs to attack him on the insurance crisis in Florida.
So help jobs, and we'll do it. But, you know, another thing that's burdening
and
young
he's going
people
to avoid
are
that
these
like the
student
plague.
loans. Now, I don't support having a truck driver having to pay a student loan for someone that got a degree in gender studies. That is wrong. We should not have taxpayers do that. What I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to get to the root cause of the problem. These student loans are going to be backed by the universities because they need to have an incentive to produce gainful employment for people. They should not be indulging in ideological studies. They should be focusing on things that work. And we're going to take some of this money and we're going to move it to actual vocational training. In Florida, we doubled apprenticeships. We have more truck drivers. These are in-demand skills. Don't let anybody tell you that the only way you can be successful is through a 4-year brick and ivy degree. That's one way you can be. It's not the only way, and we're going to fix that problem.
DeSantis could have waited, but he backstabbed Trump, and Florida voters voted for him to be governor of Florida. And then he's not finishing that out, and he's running for president. He could have waited. It makes no sense to me other than people wanted to make money off of his campaign.
Just pleaded guilty to allowing his platform to launder money for terrorists, including Hamas. You say your cryptocurrency plan will, quote, ensure economic freedom for Americans, end quote. Won't it also ensure economic freedom for fraudsters, criminals, and terrorists?
Look, fraudsters, criminals, and terrorists have been defrauding people for a long time. Our regulations need to catch up with the current moment. The fact that SBF was able to do what he did at FTX shows that whatever they have as the current framework
Ramaswamy's
isn't
not
working.
so far out of that realm, ladies and gentlemen.
That Gary Gensler, the current leader of the SEC, in front of Congress, could not even say whether Ethereum counted as a regulated security or not. And so I think that this is just another example of the administrative state gone too far. Here's the dirty little secret in American politics today. The people who we elect to run the government are not the ones who are even actually that are writing regulations that Congress never gave them the authority to write. And the good news is a U.S. president can absolutely fix that. That takes a U.S. president with a spine. So what I've said is in my administration, by the end of year one, we will have a 75% reduction in the number of federal bureaucrats. We will shut down government agencies that should not exist. We will rescind any regulation that fails the test of West Virginia versus EPA, which is the most important Supreme Court case of our lifetime, that said if Congress didn't delegate that to an administrative agency, then it's unconstitutional. These are seismic changes. These are big changes that the next president can deliver without asking Congress for permission or for forgiveness. And I want people to understand that distinction, because people have been sold myths by politicians for a long time saying, I'm going to work with Congress to do this or that. Much of what you've heard on the stage from the other politicians fit that description. They need Congress. The things that I'm promising you, this is what the leader of the executive branch gets to do under Article 2 of the Constitution.
Thank you, sir.
Cut down the bureaucracy. That's how we grow our economy and put the Federal Reserve in its place. This is part of the crypto discussion.
No.
90%
Mr.
headcount reduction at the Fed.
You're out of time. 15 seconds, Governor DeSantis.
So one of the dangers that we're going to face, Biden wants, is a central bank digital currency. They want to get rid of cash, crypto. They want to force you to do that. They'll take away your privacy. They will absolutely regulate your purchases. On day one as president, we take the idea of central bank digital currency and we throw it in the trash can. It'll be dead on arrival.
I agree with that. Gotta go to break. Gotta get a break. I have a whole second hour to get to. It's exciting. And when we come back, we got a big subject. Huge, you might even say. Donald Trump. Stay tuned.
So, back to DeSantis. DeSantis, again, what I said earlier, I have no idea. Well, I do have an idea of why he ended up running, because there are a lot of people that are getting paid to run his campaign. And what's frustrating for people in the state of Florida is they voted for him. He's done a great job in Florida, except for insurance. Insurance has been an absolute disaster. Insurance rates have gone up to the point where there are some people who are going naked on hurricane insurance, if they're even able to, if they don't have a mortgage, because they just simply either can't get the policies or they can't afford them. There's been rampant fraud, roofing fraud, that have driven up the cost of insurance as well in the state of Florida, and it has not been fixed. And it's continuing to actually get worse, commercial and on personal lines. And the fact that he's not getting hammered on that relentlessly just goes to show you how out of touch a lot of these other opponents are. And the fact that he couldn't wait and say, you know what, I'm not going to run. I'm going to wait my turn. I'm going to let Donald Trump go. And then after he runs through another 4 years, then I can run. I've finished out my term as the governor of Florida, and then I can go ahead and run. And that, to me, is a huge deal breaker for me and DeSantis as well. That, to me, should be the main reason why, people would say, I'm for Trump and not for DeSantis, is because he could have waited his turn. And now I think he's really hurt himself later on down the road, because he's certainly not going to get Trump's endorsement. At least I don't think he's going to get it later on down the road if he decides to run for president. And again, Ramaswamy, he sits there and talks about cryptocurrency, and he essentially, in my opinion, ran his own pump and dump scheme with that drug Axivant. I mean, it's a drug that he pumped up in an IPO, made a ton of money, and it didn't work out. And so that's how he became a multimillionaire. That's how he is able to run for president. Because a lot of these people on stage have, a ton of money. And, Ramaswamy is able, I think, basically able to run his own campaign with the amount of money that he has. He does have a lot of good things to say, though. but I just don't trust him at all. So even for vice president, Ryan, I just don't trust Ramaswamy at all. Again, I think maybe for a cabinet position, but you need to read that the Axavant story, because to me it's a huge turnoff for me on that guy, and so yeah, Robert Barnes is I think he's one of the smartest lawyers there is. I really like him a lot. Tucker Carlson, yeah, I don't know. I don't know, it just seems weird to me to have Tucker Carlson even as a cabinet member. I don't know. Again, those of you who've recently joined, I appreciate it. But also do me a huge favor, because I'm not so sure I'm going to be on YouTube much longer with the way that they're treating me. Go over to Rumble. So it's rumble.com/Dennis Hendrickson and subscribe to me there as well.
Welcome back, everyone. So you've all spent a lot of time criticizing each other on this stage, as Governor Christie pointed out, and less so for most of you on the front runner in this race, Donald Trump. We invited him to come tonight, as you know, but he declined to come. But we'd like to ask
why would he want to?
About him.
Why does he need to? He doesn't.
Ambassador Haley.
It's only a downside.
Former President Trump recently promised, if he's reelected, to bring back and expand his program restricting immigration from Muslim countries. Here he is in Iowa on October 16th.
No longer will we allow dangerous lunatics, haters, bigots, and maniacs to get residency in our country. We're not going to let them stay here. If you empathize with radical Islamic terrorists and extremists, you're disqualified. You're just disqualified.
Ambassador Haley, do you support President Trump's plan for ideological screening?
Well, I don't think that you have a straight-up Muslim ban as much as you look at the countries that have terrorist activity that want to hurt Americans. You can ban those people from those countries. That's the way we should look at it, is which countries are a threat to us. You look at what came across the southern border. What worries me the most are those that came from Iran, from Yemen, from Lebanon, those areas where they say death to America. That's where you want to be careful. It's not about a religion. It's about a fact that certain countries are dangerous and are threats to us. A president has one job, and that's to keep Americans safe. And that's what we've got to do, is make sure that we have good national security in that process. And that's the way you should look at it, is where the terrorist threats are, how we're going to deal with it, and what we're doing about it. And the biggest threat we have right now is communist China. But you have to also look at what Iran and Russia are doing as well. And we need to be paying attention to that. That's why we have to focus on things like cyber, on space, on artificial intelligence, and not just the regular things that we've always focused on.
It's not just terrorism, though. That's important. But look what's happened in Europe. You have more anti-Semitism in Germany than at any time since Adolf Hitler. Why? Because they imported mass numbers of people who reject their culture. Europe is committing suicide with the mass migration, and it's illegal and legal. Nikki Haley said the other day there should be no limits on legal immigration, and that corporate CEOs should set the policy on that. There needs to be limits on immigration, and we should not be importing people from cultures that are hostile. So, for example, I said with the Gaza, you had some of the squad wanted to import 300,000 people from the Gaza Strip. I said, no, we're not taking anyone from Gaza because of the anti-Semitism and because they reject American culture. So we've got to get smart about this. We cannot let the United States be like Europe.
So there's low-hanging fruit here. I may just hit this point because it relates to what they just said. There are things that the government can do right now that nobody's talking about amongst the professional politicians in this race. What about all of the illegals who are already here? Here's the answer. There's 287G in the law. That is a provision that already allows ICE agents to deputize or allow local law enforcement to enforce those ICE warrants. And it shocks me that nobody in the Republican Party is talking about it, because there are 1 million then officials, law enforcement officials in this country, And against that backdrop, we absolutely have the ability to deport anybody who's in this country illegally.
Thank you,
we
Mr.
need to be talking about it more in this country.
Thank you. Governor Christie.
I actually did that as governor of South Carolina.
Governor Christie asked last night in Iowa whether he would be a dictator if he wins a second term in office. Donald Trump quipped, no, quote, except for day one, promising to seal the southern border. He has also pledged to begin the largest deportation operation in American history, saying that migrants are, quote, poisoning the blood of our country. He has pledged to round up and expel an estimated 11 million undocumented immigrants in the United States. What do you make of that plan?
I think it's completely predictable. I mean, look, he's made it very clear. There's no mystery to what he wants to do. He started off his campaign by saying, I am your retribution. 8 years ago, he said, I am your voice. This is an angry, bitter man who now wants to be back as president because he wants.
Sounds like Christie's describing himself right now.
Anyone.
He's an angry, bitter man.
Anyone who has tried to hold him to account for his own conduct. And every one of these policies that he's talking about are about pursuing a plan of retribution.
He just doesn't understand how
first debate,
ridiculous he sounds.
My 3 colleagues on this stage, when asked if he would be convicted of federal felonies, would they still support him, raise their hand, looked into the camera, and let everybody know
Chris
that
Christie
they would still
believes that
support
these
him,
things are
even if
these
convicted
charges
of
are
federal
legitimate.
felonies. Federal felonies, by the way. Federal felonies
Trumped up
which
charges
involve our election
by
process.
the Biden
federal
DOJ.
felonies which involve the most sensitive of our governmental secrets. Federal felonies where he instructed others to commit crimes. Folks who are now agreeing to go to jail because of what they did in his name. So do I...
Because they're threatened with 20 and 30 years, so what are they going to do? Chris Christie might as well change to a Democrat. That's where he might as well be.
Making excuses for him, pretending that somehow he's a victim.
He is.
Empowers him. You want to know why those poll numbers are where they are? Because folks like these 3 guys on the stage make it seem like his conduct is acceptable. Let me make it clear. His conduct is unacceptable. He's unfit, and be careful of what you're going to get. If you ever got another Donald Trump term, he's letting you know, I am your retribution. He will only be, Elizabeth, he will only be his own retribution. He doesn't care for the American people.
God, man, this
it's
guy
Donald
is such
Trump
a
first.
freaking
Thank you,
scumbag.
Governor Christie. Governor DeSantis.
God, is he a
Governor
scumbag.
DeSantis. Thank you. Thank you. Governor DeSantis, Donald Trump would be older on day one of his second presidency than Joe Biden was on day one of his first. You have said Trump is not the same man he was when he ran in 2016. Your campaign is running ads showing Trump
These guys
confused.
have nothing to go on.
And you have said he has, quote, lost the zip on his fastball. You seem to be saying Donald Trump is no longer mentally fit to be president.
Coming from a
Is
man
that
who
what
wears
you
high
think?
heels.
Look, he is showing Father Time is undefeated. The idea that we're going to put someone up there that's almost 80 and there's going to be no effects from that, we all know that that's not true. And so we have an opportunity to do a next generation of leaders and really be able to move this country forward. We also need a president that can serve 2 terms. I don't think Donald Trump, I think he's going to have, I don't think he'd be able to get elected. The Democrats want him to be the nominee. We see that. They are going to turn the screws the minute, if he got the nomination,
But do you think he's
you're going to see
mentally
it.
fit to be
I think
president?
we need to have somebody younger. I think when you get up to 80, I don't think it's a
In
job
other
for
words,
that.
yes,
But
he's
let me just
mentally fit,
respond to
but
some of the
I'm
things
just going
there.
to throw out the
Look,
age thing.
The media is making a big deal about what he said about some of these comments. I would just remind people that is not how he governed. He didn't even fire Dr. Fauci. He didn't fire Christopher Wray. He didn't clean up the swamp. He said he was going to drain it. He did not drain it. He said he was going to build a wall and have Mexico pay for it. We don't have
He's
the
right
wall.
about cleaning up the
He did say in 2016
he
he'd
did
have the largest
not fire who he
deportation
needed to fire
program
and surround
in
himself
history.
with who he needed to
deported
surround
less
himself
than
with.
Barack
But
Obama
I think he
did
changed that.
when Barack Obama was president. So some of these policies he ran on in 16, I was cheering him on then, but he didn't deliver it. Here's what I can promise people. 100% of the things I promised as governor, I delivered on those promises. I beat the left time and time again, and that's what I'll do for you as president. We got to start winning again as a party. Yes, win the election, but we've got to start getting these issues. I will go in and wreak havoc on this bureaucracy. You will see people fired, and we are going to bring a reckoning for how this government handled COVID-19 and lockdown.
And he could have done that after Trump's 4 years. He could have done that. And now he's not going to have a
Why doesn't he
chance.
just answer the question? The question was very direct. Is he fit to be president or isn't he? The rest of the speech is interesting, but completely non-responsive. And if we were in a courtroom, they'd strike the answer and say, Governor DeSantis.
No, they
you're
wouldn't. They would say that
you're a smart
they would
man.
argue that
no, they would.
No, they wouldn't.
They would
Chris.
strike the answer
no, they wouldn't.
because you're not answering it.
You
Is
just
he
don't
fit?
like. You
is
have
he
your.
fit?
You have
no.
your thing.
Is he
you
fit
have
or
your
isn't he?
thing.
No, I don't have my thing.
We don't.
He's the thing. Is
we
he
do
fit
not
or
want
isn't
to
he?
do
this guy,
You're
someone
talking
that's
about
almost
him being 80
nuts.
years
It
old.
doesn't mean
Ron,
that somebody
is he
couldn't
fit?
get elected. That's
Ron,
up to the people.
Governor
Ron.
DeSantis,
Chris Christie
Governor
is
DeSantis,
out of
let him
control.
finish.
Or isn't he?
No,
Somebody who's
Governor
in-
DeSantis,
Too
let
far.
him finish.
Ron,
Okay.
is
I
he
think
fit?
we have an opportunity
Guys,
to do
guys,
somebody
guys,
who
no
is in the
talking
prime
over
of their
each other.
life.
Yes.
You don't have to
No
worry
talking over
about all
I'm
the stuff
good.
with
Ron,
confidence.
DeSantis,
We can
Chris
get it
Christie's a
done.
maniac.
I'm going to come
Bottom
to you.
line maniac.
Finish.
Look, Father Time is undefeated. I don't know how he would score on a test, but I know this. We have an opportunity to nominate someone and elect someone for 2 terms who's going to be spitting nails on day one and for 8 years
So
deliver
you do think he's
big
fit?
result.
You
we
do
should
think.
not nominate somebody
He won't answer.
who's almost 80 years old.
Okay.
He's afraid to answer.
No, I'm not.
You have to
No.
either you're afraid or you're not listening.
No, it's not.
There's a
You
simple
don't
question.
want to hear the
Is he
answer.
fit?
Governor DeSantis.
Is he
I know you have
fit?
the
Hey,
vendetta
nobody
against
can hear
Ron.
this.
I
No
get
one can
that.
hear you. They can't hear you. You finish, and then you get it back.
All right.
Look, I'm a simple guy, okay? I hear the question, and I answer it. Is he fit or isn't he? I'll concede you're fit, Ron. You're a new generation. You're 44 years old. I wish I was still 44 years old, okay?
45.
So, well, congratulations. I'd still take 45. Is he fit or isn't he? And this is the problem with my 3 colleagues. They're afraid to offend. And
See,
let me tell you something. If you're afraid to offend Donald Trump, then what are you going to do when you sit across from President Xi, you sit across from the Ayatollah, you sit across from
What are you going to act
Putin?
like a maniac like you?
You
are?
have to be willing to offend with the truth.
Okay.
And answer the
about
question.
offending.
Fit or unfit?
Okay, listen.
Fit or
I
unfit?
promised Ron DeSantis a minute and
Talking about
not a
fit.
full minute.
I've got
A second.
It is not about
You can weigh in
offending.
and then we're moving
It's
on.
about pointing out, do you want to elect somebody who will be older than Biden was when he went in 2021? I don't think he's as bad as Biden was at all, but I do think that over a 4-year period, it is not a job for somebody that's pushing 80. We need somebody that's younger. We need somebody that's going to be able to go in there and clean house on day one and do it for 2 terms. And I'll be able to
Here's
do
my
that.
issue with all 3 of my other colleagues on this debate stage, is all 3 of them have been licking Donald Trump's boots for years for money and endorsements. Ron DeSantis, you've been a great governor, but you would have never been one without actually
That's
begging Donald
exactly
Trump for that
right.
endorsement.
You attacked him in
for
your
Nikki
book a
Haley.
year ago.
Same
Bam.
thing with Chris Christie
Yep.
as a lobbyist, begging them for COVID money for his special interests in New Jersey, prepping him for the debates
If you
last
shake
time
your head
around.
for it, it's true.
These people are now Monday morning quarterbacking some decision he made. I think the real enemy is not Donald Trump. It's not even Joe Biden. It is the deep state that at least Donald Trump attempted to take on. And if you want somebody who's going to speak truth to power, then vote for somebody who's going to speak the truth to you. Why am I the only person on the stage, at least, who can say that January 6th now does look like it was an inside job? That the government lied to us for 20 years about Saudi
hand it to him.
Arabia's
He says all the
involvement
right
in
things.
9/11. That the great replacement theory is not some grand right-wing conspiracy theory.
Chris Christie
but
will
a
never say
basic
that.
Statement of the Democratic
Tell everybody else that
Party's
they're afraid to
platform,
offend, but
that the
he won't say this.
2020 election was indeed stolen by big
Yep.
tech. That the 2016 election, the one that Trump won for sure, was also one that was stolen from him by the national security establishment that actually put up the
Oh, they're
Trump
trying to
Russia
shut him
collusion
up. Do you
hoax
see
that
that?
it
Oh,
was false.
thank you.
There's a reason why I'm the
They don't
only
like this
person
now.
on the stage who
They're
can
trying
say
to shut
these
him up.
things. That's what it's going to take, not people who are licking his boots one time and now
Somebody's talking in their ear to tell them to shut up
when it's
now.
convenient.
Governor Christie. You do not favor a ban on trans medical treatments for minors, saying it's a
They
parental
changed the
rights
subject
issue.
real quick.
The surgeries done on minors involve cutting off body parts at a time when these kids cannot even legally smoke a cigarette. Kids who go from puberty blockers to cross-sex hormones are at a much greater likelihood of winding up sterile. How is it that you think a parent should be able to okay these surgeries, never mind the sterilization of a child?
He's Mark,
And
I don't know
aren't you
why you're-
way too out of step on this issue to be the Republican nominee.
No, I'm not. Because Republicans believe in less government, not more. and less involvement with government, not more in government involvement in people's lives. And you know what, Megyn? I trust parents. And we're out there saying that we should empower parents in education. We should empower parents to make more decisions about where their kids go to school. I agree. We should empower parents to be teaching the values that they believe in their homes without the government telling them what those values should be. And yet, we want to take other parental rights away. I'm sorry. As a father of 4, I believe there is no one who loves my children more than me. There's no one who loves my children more than my wife. There's no one who cares more about their success and health in life than we do. Not some government bureaucrat, not some. You look at these jokers down in Congress. It takes them 3 weeks to pick a speaker, and up until 2 days ago, they couldn't promote somebody in the military in the United States Senate who earned their new rank. And we're going to put
Mark,
my
I put you in
children's
as an
health
approved user.
and my
I don't know if that's going to make
decisions in their
any sort
hands
of a
for
difference
them
or
to
not.
make
I don't
those
know why your
decisions,
messages
for
are
Joe
being pulled.
Biden to make those decisions, for me and for my wife. Let me just say this. This is not something I favor. I think it's a very,
But I
very
put you in as
dangerous thing to do.
an approved
But that's
commenter,
my
so
opinion as a
I don't know if
parent,
that's going to
Megyn.
change
And
things.
I get to make the decisions about my children,
But again, Mark,
not anybody else. And every parent
subscribe
out there
to me
who's
on
watching
Rumble
tonight,
and try
you start
to
to turn
chat
over
with
just a
me on
little bit of
Rumble.
this authority, the authority they're going to take from you next.
'Cause I'm
you're not
looking at
gonna
chats
like.
from both
I'll
sides,
stand up
everyone.
for parents each and every time.
So there are laws banning smoking or drinking by a certain age.
Let me tell you something. I have a follow-up question for him, and you guys are going to get to weigh in. Okay? Here's my follow-up question. You talk about parental rights. Let's talk about them. When you were governor in 2017, you signed a law that required new guidelines for schools dealing with transgender students. Those guidelines.
Okay, I'm gonna mute this for a second about this whole transgender thing. The whole transgender thing is very simple. These are Marxist communists that are trying to do what they can to destroy the nuclear family, and this is one of the things that they use in order to destroy the nuclear family, and to also demoralize kids and also get them to not reproduce. That is the whole Marxist play that's in their playbook, is to destroy the nuclear family and not have people give them the ability to procreate, because they want to stop people from having kids and having families. That's what this is all about. So it's very simple. The thing is, none of this should happen. If you want to do whatever you want to do at 18 and over, go ahead and do it. But it should be illegal, period, from 18 years and younger. That's just all they should be saying right now.
But the minute you start to take those rights away from parents, you don't know that slippery slope, what rights are going to be taken away next.
These are the
and what's
communists
gonna
wanting to take the
happen.
rights away from parents because they want to control your kids.
Abuse your kids. This is cutting off their genitals.
That's exactly what it is. It's
Mutilating
abuse.
these minors. These are irreversible procedures, and this is something that other countries in Europe, like Sweden, once they started doing it, they saw it did incalculable damage. They've shut it down. I signed legislation in Florida banning the mutilation of minors because it is wrong. We cannot allow this to happen in this country. And I know Chris disagrees with me, and I think he has an honest position. Nikki disagrees with me. She opposes the bill that we did to ban that. She said the law shouldn't get involved with it. You said the law shouldn't get involved with it. She also, though, I think, and this flows from what she did as governor of South Carolina, they had a bill to try to say that men shouldn't go into girls' bathrooms. And she killed that bill, and she bragged that she killed that bill. Even to this day, she bragged that. I don't think men should be going into little girls' bathrooms. I think it's wrong, and I think we have every right to protect them from that.
I am going to come to you. I promise 10 seconds. Go quickly.
I think the North Star here is transgenderism is a mental health disorder. We don't let you smoke a cigarette by the age of 18. We don't let you have an addictive drink of alcohol by the age of 21. And I just challenge Ron DeSantis to go one step further.
Again, this is
and
just a
support
communist
what I think is
Marxist
clearly
play.
within
That's all that
the
is.
authority to do, using federal funds just like Reagan did in '84 for the Highway Act that said the minimum drinking age needs to be 21. We can do the same thing when it comes to banning genital mutilation or chemical castration.
Okay.
I know Ron's been
Let me get
unclear
to
on that on the
Ambassador
federal
Haley.
level. I'm crystal clear. That's where I stand.
Got
and
it.
That's a mental health disorder. That's where we
it.
need to be at.
Go ahead.
So first of all, Ron has continued to lie because he's losing.
No, it's not a lie.
You are lying.
You
so
said
first
it on
of all,
tape.
So first of all, I will say that when I was governor, 10 years ago when the bathroom situation came up, we had maybe a handful of kids that were dealing with an issue. And I said, we don't need to bring government into this, but boys go into boys' bathrooms, girls go into girls' bathrooms, and if anyone else has an issue, they use a private bathroom. Now, 10 years later, we see that this issue has exploded. And this shows how hypocritical Ron continues to be. When he was running for governor and they asked him about that, he said he didn't think bathroom bills were a good use of his time. You can go look that up.
I signed a bathroom bill in Florida, so
But
that's obviously not true.
So the idea that you would say that I was against that.
You didn't. You killed it. I signed it. I
We
stood up
didn't.
for little girls. You didn't do it. And there was this going on. I was actually just in South Carolina. Some of the legislators told me at the time there were boys going into the girls. That's the whole reason why they did it.
No.
And so they say when she does that explanation that doesn't hold water. And this is the upstate of South Carolina.
Ron.
I signed the bill. I protected
Do you
the
know
girls.
South Carolinians?
She did not do it.
Do you know
I
South
know that.
Carolinians? Because South Carolinians, no. You are not going to talk about my state like that, because I will tell you for a fact, South Carolinians never allowed that to happen, and we did not have that issue at the time. What I have always said is boys go into a boys' bathroom, girls go into a girls' bathroom. But hold on one second. I also say that biological boys shouldn't be playing in girls' sports, and I will do everything I can to stop that, because it's the women's issue of our time.
And I signed legislation to protect women's sports. I actually get this stuff done.
You got it. Thank you, guys. We're going to move on. Mr. Ramaswamy, when discussing your Hindu faith in September, you seemed to take a shot at Ambassador Haley, who is also Indian American and who converted to Christianity as an adult. You said, an easy thing for me to do, being a politician, is to shorten my name, profess to be a Christian, and then run. Make Vivek Vicky or whatever, end quote. Are you questioning Nikki Haley's Christian convictions? And why has your campaign made a point of referring to Ambassador Haley by her given first name, Nimarata, even though she's gone by Nikki for her whole life?
Well, my whole deal is if Nikki Haley, of all people, should know how to pronounce my name correctly, the rest of the news media can learn it. My deal is I'll call her Nikki when she can say my own name right. That's our little fun side bet there. Here's what I will say is deeper. I don't question her faith, but I question her authenticity. And I think that's deeper here. We were just talking about the trans issue. This is a symptom of a deeper cancer in American life, identity politics. This new religion that says your race, your gender, and your sexuality are your identity. It is anti-American. It is meritocratic, it's anti-meritocratic, and it is dividing this country to a breaking point. And I've spoken about this to the left. My books are all about this. I've preached this to the left, but it's even worse when Republicans try to play the same game. We're talking about that trans issue. And Nikki Haley's campaign launch video sounded like a woke Dylan Mulvaney Bud Light ad talking about how she would kick in heels. At the first debate, she said that only a woman can get this job done. That's what she said. After the third debate, when I criticized Ronna McDaniel after 5 failed years of leadership of this party and criticized Nikki for her corrupt foreign dealings as a military contractor, she said that I have a woman problem. Nikki, I don't have a woman problem. You have a corruption problem. And I think that that's what people need to know. Nikki is corrupt. This is a woman who will send your kids to die so she can buy a bigger house. This is the problem. Using identity politics more effectively than Kamala Harris is a form of intellectual fraud. And it actually needs to end. There's our donor puppet masters wielding their puppet right up here tonight.
Yeah, the donors
This is
can't
how
even
this game
hide
is
the
played.
fact
The puppet
that
masters
they're
put
in
up
that
their
audience.
puppet,
It's
and
really
I reject
pathetic.
the use of identity politics in this party. It has been a cancer coming from the left, and I'm sick and tired of the double standards. The people of this country are too. Having 2 X chromosomes does not immunize you from criticism.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Governor Haley, would you like to respond?
No. It's not worth my time to respond to him.
You have been using identity politics at every step. She knows it's true, and that's why she's acting.
Sir, we're not going to give you a response to the question that was to you.
Okay, we got to move on to this. Now, by arrangement with the Republican National Committee, we've got 2 questions for you about the Justice Department and our election system. Here's Tom Fitton with Judicial Watch. Governor Christie, this one's for you.
President Trump and many of his supporters claim federal law enforcement agencies have abused his civil rights for the last 8 years by, among other things, spying on him and now prosecuting him while having treated Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden with kid gloves. A recent Gallup poll shows that Americans think more highly of the U.S. Postal Service than they do the FBI or Justice Department. What would you do as president to restore the faith of the American people
He would do
in
nothing.
these agencies?
Absolutely nothing.
Well, first off, I'm the only person on this stage who's actually done a job in the Department of Justice. I was the U.S. Attorney in New Jersey in the 5th largest office in this country, appointed by President Bush on September 10th, 2001. And it was an extraordinary time in this country to be on the front lines of fighting the greatest attack against our country since Pearl Harbor.
Yeah, the leftist tactic is just to shut down. They can't, if they don't have an answer, they just shut down.
And one of the reasons I am is because I had an attorney general when I came in named John Ashcroft. And John Ashcroft stood up and told each and every one of us our job was to do one thing, to make sure justice was done every day, regardless of partisanship.
Any of you trust Chris Christie?
Of gender or race.
I
or
mean,
any other
considering what he's saying about Trump, would you
trust him?
trust
That's what
him?
we did for 7 years, and at a time when our country was at its greatest moment of danger in the last 40 years, we did exactly that, and there was not another domestic terrorist attack on this soil. So what I would do as president, having had that experience, and the only one who's had that experience, is to pick an attorney general who will absolutely do the same thing that John Ashcroft did, to pick U.S. attorneys who will only care about making sure that justice is done without regard to any other consideration but the facts that are presented and whether someone is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt and the government can prove it. We have had attorneys general like Eric Holder and Loretta Lynch and Jeff Sessions, and now our current attorney general, who have not met that standard. And
But he's sitting there saying that Trump
in the justice system
is guilty of everything
like
he's being
in charge
charged
of
with.
the Justice Department, and then
He's completely
president
contradicting
to get
himself.
the hell out of the way on anything that involves criminal investigations. If a president's involved in trying to do something and put their thumb on the scale, as Donald Trump says he will do, that makes people much less likely to believe our justice system.
He's so full of shit.
Thank you. Governor DeSantis, next one's for you. Back to Tom Fitton.
He completely contradicted
Many Republicans are concerned
himself.
about the legitimacy of elections. A federal judge just ruled that Pennsylvania must count undated mail-in ballots, and unlike Alabama, many states still don't require any identification to vote. What should states do now to increase election integrity and voter confidence for the 2024 election?
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
He's
Tom,
like Jim
thanks for the
Cramer.
question. Thanks for what you guys do at Judicial Watch. It's really, really important. There's a lot of corruption in this government. You guys are doing a great job. What you should do for election integrity is do what we did in Florida. 20 years ago, Florida and elections was a joke. Everybody would laugh at it. I came in, I removed a couple supervisors from South Florida. We require voter ID universal, no Zuckerbucks, no mass mail balloting, and no ballot harvesting. We even have an agency that prosecutes people for violating election laws. The result of that, in both 2020 and 2022, we counted millions and millions of votes on election night, produced the results, it was transparent, and everybody was happy. That is not happening throughout this country. But let me tell you this as the nominee. I think it's important. Not every state's where we need it to be. There is ballot harvesting in places like Nevada, all these places. I am not going to fight with one hand tied behind my back. I'm going to have organizations in all the swing states. If they're harvesting, we're harvesting. If they're Zuckerbucks, we're Zuckerbucks. We are going to exploit whatever the rules are. I favor changing the rules to be like Florida and some of the other states that have done a good job. But until then, we have to do that. And then just on the Justice Department and FBI. I mean, I remember being, in Iraq working with FBI on the ground and being, and then I was a special assistant. I used to have such a high regard for these agencies. What they did to Donald Trump with the Russia collusion was one of the biggest abuses of power in the history of our country. These agencies need to be cleaned out. With me, you'll have a new FBI director on day one. We're going to clear out the DOJ, the IRS, all these places. Buckle your seatbelts. There's going to be a new sheriff in town.
Thank you. All right, we got to do a quick break. We're going to come back in 1 minute. China up next.
Santa's coming soon.
Okay.
Have you finished your Christmas shopping?
What's everybody think so far? Who's
Get
winning?
15% off your entire purchase at the...
So Coach Hayes 100 Judicial Watch is a joke. Tell me why. I don't. I don't think it is. I think they do good work. I mean, at least they're out there trying to, they use FOIA requests, things like that, to try and really dig down and get into the truth. So I'm not sure why you're saying that. And yeah, Chris Christie, I think everybody knows he shouldn't even be on that stage tonight. I guess that, he just has the numbers to be there. But he is a legitimate psycho. And once again, here's a guy who was in the DOJ, and he's sitting there and this is what all the leftists are saying as well, is that Donald Trump is unfit to be president because of all of these criminal charges that are pending. Now, all these charges, he hasn't been convicted of anything. The one that he was found liable for in that sexual harassment deal in New York, I think we all know that that woman was crazy. And of course, the juries in New York, they all hate Donald Trump with a passion. So he's never going to get a fair trial in New York City. It's just never going to happen. And the one with all the Trump companies, with that Judge Engoron, after Trump's attorneys tried to dismiss that case, had said, and they tried to dismiss the case based on the fact that there were no victims. There were no banks. No one was coming back and saying, hey, we didn't get paid here. Donald Trump committed fraud on us. Engoron's excuse was the market itself was a victim, which I've never heard in my entire life, that a market is the victim. So if the market is the victim and the trial needs to continue, then you need to go after a lot more people in New York City for doing essentially the same thing. All of this is prosecutorial misconduct. It's selective prosecution, and it is Biden's DOJ that is going after a political opponent. It is so blatantly obvious. And then the leftists say, well, see, and even Chris Christie, who might as well be a leftist, is saying, hey, look at all these things that are happening to Trump in the justice system. Well, it's all garbage. It's lawfare. It's cheating. It's using leftists in the court system in order to tie up Trump into as many court cases as they possibly can, to either hopefully put him in jail or keep him from campaigning or drain his bank account. That's obviously what this shit is. So, for Chris Christie to come out and say, and this is what's funny. I mean, you can't possibly tell the truth and not, or lie like he's doing and just not get caught. Because he's sitting there saying, oh, well, we have these we have these ethics when it comes to being a lawyer. But at the same time, if it has to do with Donald Trump, he's basically saying that Trump is unfit for president because he's guilty of all of these charges. So he's talking out of both sides of his mouth, and he's nuts. So I think right now, Ramaswamy, I mean, he's just an amazingly good talker, but he's no different than Obama was when he was talking. I mean, he was one of the best talkers there is, and Ramaswamy is not far behind.
Welcome back to the final GOP presidential primary debate of 2023. We're going to talk about our college campuses, starting with you, Ambassador Haley.
Chris Christie is not speaking upon the
yesterday hauled elite university presidents up to Capitol Hill to answer for the displays of anti-Semitism on college campuses. These leaders, including the president of Harvard, were asked whether calling for the genocide of the Jews would violate school policies against harassment and intimidation. All of them said it would depend on the context, including whether that speech veers into conduct. How do you think these schools and the rest of society should balance the imperative of free speech against the need to prevent radical activists from harassing and intimidating others?
It was disgusting to see what happened. You know, if this had been the KKK that was doing protests on those campuses, every one of those college presidents would have been up in arms. This is just as bad.
This is terrible.
The idea
what
that they
on
would
these
go and
campuses.
allow that kind of pro-Hamas protests or agree with the genocide of Jews and try and say that they needed context on that, there is no context to that. This is what we need to do to deal with it. First of all, we have got to get foreign money out of our universities. You've got Arab money, you've got Chinese money, you've got others. We need to go to every university and say, you either take foreign money or you take American money, but the days of taking both are over. The second thing we need to do is Biden made a mistake not including anti-Zionism in the definition of anti-Semitism. If you don't think that Israel has a right to exist, that is anti-Semitic. We will change the definition so that every government, every school has to acknowledge the definition for what it is. The third thing is we really do need to ban TikTok once and for all. And let me tell you why. For every 30 minutes that someone watches TikTok, every day, they become 17% more anti-Semitic, more pro-Hamas based on doing that. We now know that 50% of adults 18 to 25 think that Hamas was warranted in what they did with Israel. That's a problem. When campuses also don't go and protect when they have these rallies and you've got students that are scared, we need to go to these universities and say, if you're not going to protect these students, if you're not going to acknowledge anti-Semitism, we'll take your tax-exempt status away. That'll fix it, and that'll take care of it for good.
Staying with you, Ambassador Haley. On October 6th, the Israeli government thought it had a clear-eyed view of the threat from Hamas. In fact, according to the New York Times, it even had Hamas's attack plan and dismissed it as an aspiration. The Israelis were wrong. In our country, the FBI director told the Senate panel just yesterday that he sees, quote, blinking red lights everywhere, and that the threat level has, quote, gone to a whole nother level since October 7th. Which of the threats facing our country do you worry could blindside us?
What worries me and what keeps me up at night is what happens between now and Election Day while Joe Biden's in office. That's what worries me more than anything else. But I'll tell you that America right now is acting like it's September 10th. We better remember what September 12th felt like, because it only takes one. And whether you're looking at open borders that are allowing people to come in, Iran knows the easiest way to get to America is through the southern border, and we're not doing anything to stop it. We've got to get the foreign infiltration out of our country, whether it's in our schools, whether it's on our social media, whether it's we need to stop all foreign lobbying that's happening to members of Congress, and we need to start securing America again. Until we do that, we are going to be at threat. We've got to look at Iran, China, and Russia want to destroy the West. We have to start acting strong again. We've got to start protecting Americans. Right now, Americans don't feel protected, and we're not doing anything to strengthen it. So Joe Biden continues to be a problem. That'll change on Election Day.
And Nikki Haley's donors, they're going to want open borders because they want to backfill jobs that Americans
If China invades Taiwan, would you send American troops, as President Biden has said he would do?
We will be able to deter that from happening. I think that's the important thing. We need a strategy of denial so that we're deterring Xi's ambitions.
What if it doesn't work?
It's going to work. Taiwan's an ally. We have longstanding American policy, and you know how that's done, and we will follow that. But here's the thing. Taiwan is important not just because of semiconductors. It's important because if China is able to break out of this first island chain, they're going to be able to dominate commerce in the entire Indo-Pacific. They will use that to export authoritarianism all around the world, including here in the United States. You look at some of these guys, actually some of them that are supporting Nikki on Wall Street, they grovel to China. Anytime something happens, they got to go do that. So they already exert a huge amount of authority over this country. It will get a lot worse. So deterring China's ambitions is the #1 national security task that I will do as president, and we will succeed. The 21st century needs to be an American century. We cannot let it be a Chinese century.
Mr. Ramaswamy,
I think we need to be I'll be clear on the same issue, if I may.
I'm coming to you next on Taiwan. You said, if you want to stop Xi from invading Taiwan, quote, let's open a branch of the NRA in Taiwan and put an AR-15 in the hands of every family and train them how to use it.
I stand
That
by
will
it.
give Xi a taste of American exceptionalism, end
Yes.
quote. The National Police in Taiwan announced a zero-gun policy last year. Is this a serious policy proposal? And if it isn't, why do you keep repeating it?
Well, it's part of a broader deterrence strategy. And so I think I'm going to respectfully disagree with Ron here. I think the next U.S. president needs to be crystal clear that, at least for the foreseeable future, the U.S. will absolutely defend Taiwan. And it is with that clarity that we actually achieve deterrence. But I have a broader strategy than that. We need to get on side in our relationship with India, take it to the next level. India has to be able to block the Andaman Sea, which is where China gets most of its Middle Eastern oil supplies. That's critical. I also do believe the Second Amendment is a critical way of preventing foreign autocrats from being able to. It's worked in America. Why wouldn't
I
it
don't
work
see
in
how
Taiwan?
that's realistic.
So
You're
it is
just
part
going to
of a
send a
broader
bunch of arms
strategy.
and a bunch of
But I
people are
do
going to
think
pick
that
them
we
up
need
and
to be
hold on to them.
specific
I mean, it's
about our deterrence
something
strategy.
that we've had
or
the
else
Second
Xi
Amendment
Jinping is
for,
just encroaching by the day.
forever.
And the reason why we're not doing it for China, I want to be crystal clear, is because we're scared. Why are we scared? Because we depend on them for our modern way of life. Why do we depend on them for our modern way of life? It's because Nikki Haley's latest friends like Larry Fink have created commingled economies with BlackRock telling Exxon and Chevron they can't drill here, while being a shareholder of PetroChina, not applying those same constraints in China. So it is our economic dependence on China that makes us scared. If that were a Russian spy balloon, we'd have shot it down in an instant. If that were a Russian spy base in Cuba, we'd be actually going hard on them instead of turning the other way as we are with China. So it comes back down to that economic dependence. We cannot depend on them for our pharmaceuticals, our semiconductors, and people have been lied to for a long time. Our own military, the F-35 jets that we make in this country, depend on China, and it's going to take an outsider to fix that broken establishment.
Thank you, Mr. Ramaswamy. Ambassador Haley, would you like to respond?
I mean, when it comes to China and Taiwan, the one way that we keep China from going into Taiwan is, one, make sure that we win in Ukraine, that we protect our friends, but also let China know that they'll be held to pay if they go into Taiwan.
Ukraine.
They need to know that there is going to be a force that's going to go against them. And they need to know it's not just going to be the United States. That is why we need to build our partnerships with India, with South Korea, with Japan, with the Philippines, with Australia. We need to start pulling that alliance together. And the first way we do that is we need to make sure that on day one we look at the fact, if China pulled the rug out from under us tomorrow, would we be ready? Think about what happened during COVID. Everybody told you to wear a mask. They were made in China. Everybody told you to take a COVID test. They were made in China. Everybody went and, I mean, everything that happened, if you go to the drugstore, all those medicines are made in China. We have to make sure that we are not relying on China for anything related to our national security, which means let's start focusing on doing deals with our friends now.
Thank you, Ambassador. Governor Christie, I'd like you to weigh in on that. And do you think arming every family in Taiwan with an AR-15 is a plausible policy?
You know, I don't think we have constitutional authority over Taiwan to give them a Second Amendment. I think they can only do that for themselves. But look, I want to be really clear. Once again, I want to play the role of actually answering your question, which is if China went after Taiwan, you're absolutely right. I would, as president, have us go militarily and defend them. Secondly,
Chris Christie
I'm not
just
afraid,
answered your question,
based
Coach
upon
Hayes. He'd
those
send
economic
troops.
relationships to do that, because these economic relationships mean nothing. Nothing. If what's going to happen is that China is going to come and act in that region of the world however they see fit.
It's amazing how easy these guys can
It's
just
not
say
right.
that we're going to go ahead and just
I'll
get
say
into
this
a world
about,
war with China and Russia.
What I heard from Nikki earlier. She said that Donald Trump was good on trade. He wasn't. And the proof that he wasn't good on trade with China is that all he did was impose tariffs, which raised the prices for every American. You want to know what has contributed to inflation in this country? Yes, it's more government spending. Yes, it's the fact that we're printing too much money. Absolutely, but it is also the increase in prices that were driven by Donald Trump's tariffs. And one last thing, you can't say he was good on trade because he didn't change one Chinese policy in the process. He failed on it.
Thank you, Governor Christie. Governor DeSantis, switching subjects here. For 15 years, Republicans have been burned by politicians' promises to repeal Obamacare. Trump repeatedly promised to replace it with, quote, something terrific, but failed to propose anything. You're now promising something better, but Florida has more uninsured people than almost any other state. Why should Americans trust you more than any other Republicans.
Can't
who
trust you on the
disappointed them
property
on this
insurance,
issue.
property and casualty.
Well, I think we
that's
have
for sure.
millions of Americans who do not have access to affordable health care. And it's not just getting some type of card and Medicaid, because a lot of times they don't even get access to doctors.
Don't get me
You
started
actually
on
get
Andrew
access
Tate.
to care. The other thing is we have millions and millions of people who don't have access to good doctors and good hospitals. Florida did not expand Obamacare. I think the states that did that, I think, are struggling financially. So that, yes, we declined to do that, and I don't think that that was the right policy to do. But we are going to go after the cost. You're paying too much for everything. We've actually addressed this in Florida in some ways, but you need price transparency. You need to hold the pharmaceuticals accountable. You need to hold big insurance and big government accountable, and we're going to get that done. I think it's very, very important economically.
Is so
I think it's
bad.
very, very
It is
important
so
for
bad.
the country that we get that done.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I actually wanted to. This is
Somebody
a very
needs to
personal issue
attack
to our
DeSantis,
family.
though,
I
on
wanted
homeowners
to take actually a
insurance.
minute to recognize my
If
wife
they
who's
don't,
here
they're all
today.
losers.
Badass surgeon. She did a bunch of cases with cancer survivors earlier today. Flew here to be tonight. We'll be back at 7 a.m. in Columbus, Ohio tomorrow, taking care of those patients in the OR. And on the front lines of people who have actually not swallowed for years. And here's what's something that's awful that's happening in our healthcare system. They'll pay for anything like feeding tubes, doctors to be pill pushers, but for the procedures that can actually make these patients better, we have a broken healthcare system that doesn't pay for it. My wife, Apoorva, in many cases, does not get paid for those procedures. She does them anyway because it's the right thing to do. But that does not work system-wide. So here's the answer. We don't have a healthcare system in this country. We have a sick care system. We need to start having diverse insurance options in a competitive marketplace that cover actual health, preventative medicine, diet, exercise, lifestyle, and otherwise. And here's how we deliver that. End the antitrust exemptions for health insurance companies. That's where the competitive marketplace begins. That's crony capitalism, and that's the answer.
Okay, through Operation Warp Speed,
If we have time,
the Trump administration
Lana,
and private
I'll talk
industry
about
developed a
Andrew Tate
COVID
later.
vaccine in record time.
Oh. Looks like we lost our feed here temporarily. I used to be an Andrew Tate fan. Well, I'll talk about that now while we wait for this to come back. However, the more research I've done and the more, because I've really followed him quite a bit. He is not a good dude. He says all the right things, just like Vivek Ramaswamy does. But I'll just kind of give you the 30,000-foot view of him. He takes money from naive kids, naive men, young men who are desperate because of their circumstances, who are in dark places, and they give him a lot of money, thinking that he's sort of a mentor to them when he talks down to them, calls them brokies, calls them losers, all these things. And he's been on, I've watched, I don't know how many podcasts that he's been on. I haven't watched the Piers Morgan one, but I've watched 10 or 15 others that he's been on, where he outright just brags about taking money from unsuspecting men, especially when he was running the chat thing with the girls. And so, and then I've also watched plenty of people give reviews about the courses and things that he does, and a lot of them are very, very negative about how he essentially takes money from them. So again, you have a lot of these kind of grifters, these people who sort of get into this right-wing sort of deal, but then they're really doing it for the money. And in my opinion, that's what I think Andrew Tate's doing. I just don't think he's a good guy, but that's my opinion. Let me see if I can refresh this. I don't know what's going on here. They lost their feed or something happened. I don't know. This isn't good. me see if I can find another channel. And while we wait, the other thing is the universities. I don't know if some of you have saw some of that testimony from the three presidents at Penn, MIT, and Harvard. It was pretty crazy to watch. Essentially, their answers were, do you support, are you against anti-Semitism, people calling for the destruction of Israel? And they all pretty much said, unless somebody's actually physically doing something, that's the way I kind of read their responses, then, it's not really a big deal. And, I attended Harvard for a while, and, I'm not very proud of how that current president responded, because I can guarantee you if it was anybody else, if the roles were reversed, they would say how horrible it was, and those students would be suspended immediately, blah, blah, blah. So they didn't really spend a whole lot of time on that, which I thought was kind of interesting. I think they should have, but they didn't. So give it a little bit more time here to see if they can bring the feedback up. I don't know if anything happened. Maybe Laura Loomer, because I know Laura Loomer was in there. She went into the debate. She got tickets, and which I thought was pretty funny. So I sent a tweet at her, yell out questions, and they got a pretty decent response there. I thought it was pretty funny. Maybe she was yelling out, and they had to shut things down and kick her out. But so I think Vivek Ramaswamy so far is winning. Let's see what we see in the chat here. As a conservative before I was allowed to vote, I missed the days when Republicans and Democrats worked together. Well, they are working together, the Republicans and Democrats. That's why we have what's called a uniparty right now. They all work together to basically pull the wool over our eyes to make it seem as if there is a Republican and Democratic Party. There isn't one. They all work for the same elites. So they do work together, but they're not working for us. They're not working for the American people. They're working for themselves. And every decision that they make and all the things that they do are to benefit the donor class. The donor class that you hear booing somebody like Vivek Ramaswamy, who again has his own problems and I don't trust him, but at least he's saying all the correct things. And all the ones that are cheering and supporting Nikki Haley, who works for the donor class, and that is right now who they want to be president of the United States. That donor class, that uniparty, the deep state, those that they want Nikki Haley, because Nikki Haley is going to do their bidding for them. And they made it perfectly obvious in the crowd. That's why all those people are in the crowd right now, all those donors. So Ryan, everything you said is completely agreeable, but how the Matrix attacked him and the whole shebang last year. I think, I think he was definitely attacked. I don't know if I buy into the Matrix thing anymore. I think I did, initially, and I still could be wrong about this whole thing, but I cannot get past the fact that he goes after young, naive kids to give them money to think that they're in some sort of club. He takes advantage of people, and he's admitted that he has, and he has no problem with it. Let's go back to the debate.
For your own presidency, and why?
I would draw inspiration from Ronald Reagan. In the last year, I've spent a lot of time writing a book about President Reagan that's going to be called What Would Reagan Do? That book's going to come out early in 2024. And what I learned more than anything else was that Ronald Reagan was a slave to the truth. Ronald Reagan stood up for the truth, whether it was popular or unpopular at the moment. In 1964, he stood up against the John Birch Society when it was very unpopular to the party to do it, but he would not put up with our party standing for lies and deceit, even if it gave him political progress. That's the kind of president that I will be, and I would draw that inspiration from the 40th President of the United States, Ronald Reagan.
Ambassador Haley?
Well, I have to say, too, I think George Washington, when you look at the responsibilities he had of how do you go and take on this great American experiment and make sure that the people are protected. And they always knew that government was intended to secure the rights and freedoms of the people. It was never meant to be all things to all people. And then you look at Abraham Lincoln, and you look at the challenges, and you look at the division that happened in our country, and the ability to lead in spite of the loud noises and say, what will bring out the best in people to get us to go forward is always something that's important. And I think we need that now more than ever.
Governor DeSantis.
Reagan, Washington, Lincoln, excellent. One of the guys I'll take inspiration from is Calvin Coolidge. Now, people don't talk about him a lot. He's one of the few presidents that got almost everything right. He understood the proper role of the federal government under the Constitution. We need to restore the U.S. Constitution as the centerpiece of our national life. And that requires a president who understands the original understanding of the Constitution, who has a good sense of the Bill of Rights, and who knows how we've gone off track with this massive fourth branch of government, this administrative state, which is imposing its will on us and is being weaponized against us. So Silent Cal knew the proper role of the federal government. The country was in great shape when he was president of the United States, and we can learn an awful lot from Calvin Coolidge.
Over to you, Mr. Ramaswamy, to conclude our history lesson.
Sure. Well, I will say Ron picked a president who was born on July 4th. I'll pick one who died on July 4th. It's Thomas Jefferson. He was 33 years old when he wrote the Declaration of Independence, and you all are sitting on a swivel chair today. He invented the swivel chair while he was at it, while writing that Declaration of Independence. That's that founding spirit that we miss, that we're the pioneers, we're the explorers, the guy who sent him out on the Lewis and Clark expeditions. And I think a lot about what would Thomas Jefferson say to today's Republican Party. And I think one thing he'd remind us of, we haven't talked about it as much tonight, but I think it is one of the interesting ideological discussions we're having in our party is freedom of speech. You get to express your mind freely no matter how heinous the opinion. Thomas Jefferson understood that.
All right.
He's an inspiration for me.
Thank you, Mr. Ramaswamy. And believe it or not, it's time for closing statements. Governor Christie, would you like to begin?
Sure, thank you. I want you all to kind of picture in your minds Election Day. You'll all be heading to the polls to vote, and that's something that Donald Trump will not be able to do because he will be convicted of felonies before then, and his right to vote will be taken away.
See, he's already saying that he's going to be convicted of felonies.
And here's the bottom line. You can boo about it all you like and continue to deny reality.
So he's already said
but
he's guilty. He was a lawyer for the DOJ.
Joe Biden. When my colleagues here raised their hands and said they would support him even if he was a convicted felon, the bigger problem with it is they were confirming the lies he's told to the American people. If you're too timid to take on Trump, believe me, others will see that timidity. Xi, Putin, and the Ayatollah, the border crossers on the southern border, and the criminals in our streets.
It's funny.
They'll sense that timidity, and they'll take advantage of that failure of leadership. We need to get back to an old American idea that every person is responsible for their own conduct, even a president. I'll be the kind of president who has the humility that knows that you work for the people.
You have no chance.
It's not the other way around. I will earn your trust. I want to earn your vote.
Thank you, Governor Christie. Mr. Ramaswamy?
I'll use this to just address a topic we didn't talk about tonight, but I think is one of the most important topics that needs to be discussed. That is this climate change agenda that is shackling this country like a set of handcuffs. I said it at the first debate, and I stand by it. The climate change agenda is a hoax because it has nothing to do with the climate. That's what we have to see.
That's exactly right.
98% reduction in the climate disaster-related deaths in the last century. 8 times as many people are going to die of cold temperatures this year than warm ones. Yet against that backdrop, there's an issue coming up in Iowa. It's core to Iowa farmers. I met Kim Junker, Kathy Stockdale, and other farmers who are about to have a carbon capture pipeline built across their land using eminent domain to do it. That's unconstitutional and it's wrong. And if you thought COVID was bad, what's coming with this climate agenda is far worse.
People are making money on the climate agenda. That's what it's all about. Everything is about making money.
It is a substitute for a modern religion. We are flogging ourselves and losing our modern way of life, bowing to this new god of climate, and that will end on my watch.
Thank
it's
you,
the most critical
Ambassador
issue
Haley.
that's coming up. Thank you.
It's a way to keep cheap energy expensive.
Thank you very much. Our
Energy
country
as a whole
is in
expensive,
chaos.
and for these billionaires
We
to
see it
continue
on
to
the
make
southern
money, it's
border.
all a grift.
We see it on our streets in our cities. We see it on college campuses. We feel it with our economy, with inflation and with debt. And we feel it around the world with wars in Europe and within the Middle East. We have to stop the chaos, but you can't defeat Democrat chaos with Republican chaos. And that's what Donald Trump gives us. My approach is different. No drama, no vendettas, no whining. I envision an America
She said no
where
whining,
we're
but she didn't
protected
want to
from
answer
illegal immigration
or respond
and
to
Chinese
Vivek
infiltration.
Ramaswamy.
I envision an
Or
America where we
Ron
unleash
DeSantis.
our economy and we reject socialism. But more importantly, I envision an America where we rediscover our national purpose and our pride.
Thank you.
I crushed Joe Biden in
Thank
the
you.
polls. And
Thank
if you
you.
give me this chance, we will crush him in November and take our
wants to
country
crush it
back.
with
Go
the
to
oligarchs.
Thank you,
NikkiHaley.com.
Ambassador Haley.
Yeah, there's her donors.
Governor DeSantis.
The donors can't help it. They got to let you all know that they're the donors.
We are in jeopardy of being the first generation of Americans to leave to our kids and grandkids an America less prosperous and less free than the one we inherited. I refuse to sit idly by and let that happen. But we got to have people that are going to be willing to fight the people that are doing this to us. You can't be these establishment Republicans that just cave at the first sign of opposition. I'll fight for you. We also need to win again as a party. Yes, win the election, which we've struggled to do, but also win on these big issues. And nobody has defeated these people more than what I have done in the state of Florida on issue after issue. We have won, and we have won big, and that's what we'll do for you. We also need leadership. Leadership is not about doing what's easy. It's about being willing to set out that vision, knowing they're going to shoot arrows at you. They're going to come at you. I will fight the good fight. I will keep the faith, and I will finish the race. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you, all of you.
Thanks to all of you.
Yeah, Damon, I don't think you can throw Chris Christie very far anyway. Well, that was, I don't think that was much different from the first 3 debates, which I didn't really watch all that closely, but that was pretty bad. And once again, I don't think, none of them have a chance. Chris Christie, he needs to drop out. I mean, they all need to drop out and support Donald Trump, but no one went after Ron DeSantis for the insurance issue in Florida. And I think, Mark, you had said that you know what's going on with the insurance situation in Florida as well. And it is, I can't describe how bad it is. I mean, it's to the point where people are going without insurance, or at least hurricane insurance, what we call wind insurance in Florida. Some of you might not be familiar with that, but like in California, you would have fire insurance, where in other parts of the country, you wouldn't necessarily have fire insurance or hurricane insurance because you don't have those risks. But in Florida, you have hurricane risk. And depending on the age of the home or the commercial building or whatever it is, It's gotten to the point where both homeowner and commercial carriers are not providing that wind coverage. And if you have a mortgage, either on a commercial property or home, you are required to have hurricane insurance in Florida. And so if you can't get it, they do something that's called forced place insurance. And that could be so expensive that, it could very well bankrupt you or put you into foreclosure. And I won't go into any more detail other than that. That's for a different video. But DeSantis they have not fixed that. And he continues to avoid that. And the only person I know of that's really talked about it and brought it up is Laura Loomer, who happened to be there tonight. And I would have loved to have had her screaming in the crowd. And, and I wouldn't put it past her to have done that, because she is someone who has got a lot of balls and really calls out the DeSantis crowd and the DeSantis crew, and a lot of the others on the Republican side. But yeah, no, that debate, I think Vivek Ramaswamy won it, but like I said before, he ran his own, in my opinion, pump and dump scheme with a pharmaceutical company, made hundreds of millions of dollars. He is a Barack Obama type talker. He is an incredibly good guy on stage, and he can convince you of just about everything. And he says all the right things. And he does say, he does have a lot of incredibly good points, but I don't trust him as far as I can throw Chris Christie. And it's a shame, because with everything that he says, you would love to look at a guy like that and say, oh my God, here's someone who finally says all of the right things and has the gall to say what he says. And you look at Ron DeSantis again, he's been great for Florida for everything except insurance, and then he stabbed Trump in the back. Trump is the one who got him elected. And the fact that he couldn't wait it out. He just got sucked into, these guys, the Karl Roves, those types of people who said, hey, you can run for president. Because again, I think primarily everything, if you're trying to figure it out, it all has to do with money. If you're like, why is somebody doing this? Why this doesn't make a lot of sense to me? Why it's going to be about money. It always is. It always defaults to money. Evil, everything. It's all about somehow getting paid. And that is the whole DeSantis campaign, is people were getting rich on DeSantis. It's just like, I don't know how many of you who are on Twitter or X now, but you see these guys like Harry Sisson and Brooklyn Dad Defiant, JoJo from Jurors, all these people on X that they are legitimate, and they admittedly are paid DNC operatives who will put stuff on X and say, Joe Biden's economy is doing unbelievable right now. I'm only paying $2.40 a gallon of gas. Just like, and then they'll have like an AI generated photo of Biden, because they can't find any recent photos of Biden that don't make him look like a complete idiot with testicles on his chin. These people are actually paid to tell you that Joe Biden is doing wonderfully. And it's the same with the DeSantis campaign, is that these people are getting paid, the DeSantis worm, all this stuff, to say all these wonderful things about DeSantis. And, a lot on the DeSantis campaign are actually jumping ship. There's just no possible way that this guy's going to end up winning. And he's ruined what really angers me more than anything is that if Trump gets elected in 2024, DeSantis after that can run after fulfilling his term as Florida governor and finishing the job that Floridians elected him to do. It's almost like what he's doing is he's taking the ballots, the votes that Florida cast for him, and he won by it was really close. I mean, we almost had a Democrat meth head as the governor of Florida if it wasn't for Trump. And he gets in, and then he's going to run against him? I mean, this also goes to show you how out of touch all these people are. I mean, how out of touch can you possibly be with the average voter? Or even Floridians, the people that voted for you, your own state, to not realize that, hey, you know, I have a really good shot. I'm 44 years old, 45 years old. I have a really good shot after Trump, and I'm going to have Trump's endorsement. But he ran anyway, and it turned out to be an absolute disaster. We really need to invest in renewable energy. Yeah, but we also can't just go to a Ford F-150 Lightning electric vehicle that cost $100,000, and it has 300 miles of towing or capacity on going 300 miles on one charge, but you tow something behind it and it cuts it in half. I mean, electrical cars. I mean, these electric cars now are turning out to be failures. The only one I think that's successful, and I think even Tesla's having an issue with them with sales right now. They are just not up to par. And we need cheap energy. The world needs cheap energy. Electric cars are simply not there. And the amount of when it comes to creating energy for electricity, you still need fossil fuels to do that. And then mining the materials for the batteries, the lithium. When you think about the scarring of the earth that we're doing to mine the materials for these batteries for these cars. So right now, for this ridiculous push for electric vehicle, by the way, if you don't have a Tesla, there's a video out there about a guy who's somewhere in California, Santa Barbara, I think it is. He didn't have a Tesla, and it was at nighttime, 11:30, I think, at night, and there was like a 2-hour wait or more just to get to a charging station, because if you don't have a Tesla, you can't use the Tesla charging stations because they don't fit, or whatever it is. They're not compatible. So you want to go on a long drive, or you need to get a charge and you're not at home, good luck to you on that one. I mean, this electric vehicle thing is ridiculous. And back to Andrew Tate. Yeah, Andrew Tate is just not. He's just not a good dude. He made millions of dollars on taking women and doing this chat thing on OnlyFans and all this other stuff. So these poor schleprock men who thought that they were going to get with these women were selling their homes. Andrew Tate said this verbatim. This is the only time I felt bad. This is what he said, is when there were men that were about to sell their homes or did sell their homes because they thought that if they sent all this money to these women that they would come and visit them, and they never did. So think about, and I'm not, excusing the men for doing this kind of stuff, But that's how he started out. And then later on went to, this thing with Hustlers University and this network deal where you're paying $3,000. And if you try to get out, they just basically bully you. There's a video from Ask Muhammad on YouTube. He tried it out and he gave his honest opinion and said everything that went down with that whole deal. And a lot of the stuff that he teaches, that's kind of stuff that you can pretty much learn anywhere. So, I mean, he's got a good message, but so I agree with him on the opinions on the deep state and all that kind of stuff, but he is definitely, in my opinion, taking advantage of young kids, and I don't like that. I think that's terrible. Kobe X on Rumble, take it easy, thank you. Those of you who are on Rumble, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. And those of you who are on YouTube, please go to Rumble. Don't leave here yet, but go to Rumble and subscribe to me there. Because I said before, and you have a lot of people coming on and off. Over 400, I guess it looks like now. Make sure that you follow me on Rumble because, as I said before, my monetization has gone next to zero. So I would rather you, if you're going to do any super chats or any of that, do it on Rumble. And the advertising is revenue is zero. So any support, I would appreciate it. And certainly go to Rumble, because if I do live stream and any of the things that I post on YouTube are going to be also on Rumble. Sometimes it takes me a little longer to get the stuff to Rumble. It's supposed to automatically sync, but it doesn't really work all that well. But definitely for live streaming, because if I do start going off and lose it and say the wrong thing, I'll probably get kicked off of YouTube. I have been demonetized entirely once, but they gave it back to me. But because I tell the truth, just like anybody else that's on YouTube, they have to do whatever they possibly can to try and silence me. So demonetization is one of the things. And then taking me from when I was actually doing videos and they were getting 900,000 views, or several 100,000 views in videos in the past, are down to several hundred now. So I heard too that Ford is shutting down EV truck production. Thanks, Elaine. And yeah, it's just not working for these electric cars. Are just not. $100,000 for a Ford Lightning F-150. I mean, and they're ugly. They're not even good-looking trucks. My neighbor down the street has one, and it's just I've seen him in photos, and when I saw it in real life, I'm looking at it, I'm like, wow, this is really an ugly truck. Really, really ugly. All right, so things are winding down. It's after 10 o'clock. I will be, this is my first live stream in a long time. I used to do it a couple of years ago more frequently. I am going to do it more frequently again. This was a lot of fun, but I was looking for an excuse to do it, and this debate was definitely an excuse to do it. So thank you all for watching. And again, I'll say it again one more time, and I'll stop. Please go to Rumble. Sign up on Rumble. Follow me on Rumble. It's rumble.com/Dennis Hendrickson. And then you can also follow me on X Twitter. And that is twitter.com/Den, D-E-N Hendrickson, Den Hendrickson. And, you know, the reason I like that is there are just so many more, so much more going on there. Obviously, you're not as suppressed in silence as you would be on YouTube. So really, Twitter and Rumble are really what I'm trying to support a lot more. So, all right, everybody, thank you again for watching. I am going to sign off for tonight, and I will send out, also go to my Linktree, and then also sign up there. So that way, and also if you do sign up on the, and subscribe to me on YouTube if you're not going to go, and subscribe to me on Rumble, because at the very least, you'll know when I'm going to go live again. I've just got to figure out a kind of like a regular time and schedule so everybody knows when I'm going to be out there. So either subscribe on YouTube, subscribe to me on Rumble, or follow me on Twitter, which is now X, at DEN Hendrickson. And I'll see you all in the next video. Thanks again for watching.